Good afternoon, everyone. We're in the committee of the whole meeting of Tuesday, December 19th. Health and Squalid, Peace Class Squamish, Wayamal. Welcome to the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. There is an agenda in front of the committee. I'm hoping the committee will allow me to add number 4, which is a child care needs assessment. With the amendment, moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Race. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. First up, we have 3.1 Technology Transformation Program Update. Conrad.
Good afternoon. I'm Conrad Cordell, Manager of IT. I'm here today to provide an update on our Technology Transformation Program. Just a quick overview. I'll recap our current work streams, go over the work that's been completed this year at a high level, discuss some of the work that's currently in progress and things that are coming up, and then go into our revised go live strategy. So this is really a recap of the work streams that are currently going on around for our core financial management solution and our development management solutions. So there's really 4 major work streams. The first one is for UBW, Unit for Business World. That is our core financial platform. And the first work stream there is around core financials, general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, that sort of thing. The second major work stream is our Unit for Business World payroll work stream. And so a lot of work is happening there as well right now. Third work stream, that's where we get into the Tempest solution. That's the partnered solution with Unit for Business World, Tempest. And there's a municipal modules work stream. This is really that front-facing piece. Again, it's very finance-heavy, cash, taxes and utilities, permitting, licensing, that type of functionality, much more front-facing functionality. And then the fourth work stream, also with Tempest, is the development management piece, and that's the Prospero module. That's where we get into building a solution for development management, for building, engineering, and planning, really. Also, it is linked to the customer portal piece, which is included with the Tempest solution. So work that's been completed, so for Unit for Business World, we've got those 2 major work streams. Work that's been completed there this year, we've developed project charters and a change management strategy. We developed our requirements, and based on those requirements started to develop a solution design. We've set up our server environments, set up that architecture, done the configuration. We've got development environments and testing environments, live environments, backups. We developed our new chart of accounts, which is a project of its own. It's been something that finance has been planning on for quite some time, and really a project of its own, but it made sense to do it as part of this work stream. Agilix then went off, our implementers went off and built a solution really based on our requirements and our design. And that includes our new processes, workflows, the new chart of accounts, reporting. There's still some pieces missing there, and there's still some work needed for sure, but it's a solution that we can start to test. So definitely a big move forward. The other piece was the data migration piece. That was much more of an internal piece, getting the data out of our current system into the new system, getting good data out of that system. Definitely a very challenging piece. And this is something that's going to have to happen over and over again. So as we get closer to go lives, we're going to have to keep taking data out of our current system, putting it into the new system, mapping it. But that process has really been developed now, and we actually have a small software solution to help us with that. Also, we've done super user training for the majority of our core financial modules, so that's really the finance staff training for those modules. And we've gone through our first major round of testing for core financials. And so Still finding quite a few issues. I'm told this is normal. It's your first round of testing. There's still a lot of work to be done. But this also involves a fair bit of training for finance staff. There's a lot of desk side time happening there. So work that's in progress with UBW. We're currently in our second phase of testing, IST2 integrated systems testing. It's very detailed. What they're calling it now is cradle to grave testing, which is really testing your processes end to end, testing your procedures and processes completely. Really, this is something that finance staff have to do. It can't be a consultant doing the testing for you. They have to do it, and obviously the consultants are there to help if there's an issue. This is really the biggest testing phase for this work stream. And then we're also in run one of testing our payroll. These are slightly different resources in finance, so it works. So we're testing that first payroll, and in this case they don't call it IST, they call it payroll runs, and we're in run 1 of 2 right now. Still finding lots of things that need to be fixed there as well. The other thing that's currently happening are IT upgrades and assessments. So an example would be our electronic timesheet solution, where that's something that's going to have to be rolled out to places like operations and the rec center and parks. We need to make sure they actually have the equipment to be able to do electronic timesheets. A lot of the staff there don't have dedicated workstations, so it's setting up kiosks and making sure they have the hardware to actually make this happen. Part of that is also our network upgrades, making sure they have the right connectivity at those sites and there's no lag. So that's also happening in the background. Phases that are coming up, just at a very high level, we've got our third round of testing with Core Financials, run 2 for payroll. There's also a user acceptance testing phase coming up. We've got end user training, so that's really starting to train staff on the new system, not just finance staff. There's a massive solution deployment and go live phase. A lot of resources are required to actually go live with the new systems. And then there's post go live support as well. So we don't want to underestimate what it requires after the systems go live. Staff are still going to need a lot of support. There'll be more training required for sure, and staff are going to have to get used to new processes and systems. Getting into Tempest, so there's the 2 major work streams for Tempest, municipal modules and development management. Work that's been completed there. Again, we've got project charters, a change management strategy, working on a detailed change management plan there as well right now. We had some requirements specifically for development management, but those needed to be updated and reviewed. That's happened. Specifically right now for the building department. We've also developed the server environment, done the setup and config, same thing as for UBW really. We've built the LAN platform. That's a massive step forward. So we actually now have that core database for Tempest, which is LAN based, and it's integrated with our GIS system. And so that's actually up and running. We've had to develop a data administration policy just for this system because there's some very important data that's really coming in from BC assessment that we can't, we need to be careful on who has rights to make edits. There have to be some strict controls in place and strict procedures in place for that data. And we've kicked off development management. So that's really starting with the building department for development management, and completed our super user training for that department as well. Super users. So development management, what's in progress? So like I mentioned, the building department, they're often running, starting to do configuration, starting to do data conversion. as well as testing for that Prospera module. They've got data from many different sources, including MACE, but that work is starting to happen. Coming up, we also want to work with planning and engineering. We've got some requirements for them as well already, but those need to be reviewed and updated. And so we really want to bring them up as part of this development management system rollout. So there's also super user training for them, configuration and conversion. It looks a little bit different in that area, but the same type of work needs to happen. And then there's the Tempest financial, municipal/financial modules. Really, we're putting a hold on those. Those need to go live after Unit 4 Business World system is up and running. What we don't want to do is take finance resources away from those key work streams with Unit 4 Business World and start putting them on this. And so that was always our plan, was to go live with this after Unit 4 Business World. So essentially that work stream is more or less on hold right now, but we are moving forward with development management. So that brings me to my next slide. We do have a revised go live strategy. So you're chuckling. So a lot of work has been accomplished, but we do have some delays, and so our work streams are delayed. Essentially, we started running into delays in Q3 of this year, and essentially our estimates were aggressive, and we made some incorrect assumptions. I'll certainly take some responsibility. I do have a habit of scheduling optimistically, and it's something that's worked well on smaller projects. On a project of this size, it's not ideal. So we've definitely underestimated time and effort needed for tasks. We definitely were lacking some details in our schedules. Really what's happening here is we're not just replacing one system with another. We're redeveloping processes and our core functionality. The chart of accounts is an example. That's a massive change. It's a good change, but there's a project there within a project. The best analogy I've heard is that it's not like building a new house. It's really like doing a massive reno, and when you tear down a wall, you don't know what you're going to find. We've definitely run into some of that. An example could be our data migration. We had no idea how difficult it would be to get payroll data out of MACE into the new system, to get clean, good data out of that system. Very challenging. So some of these tasks definitely didn't have the correct estimates. The other challenge has been resource availability internally, and so not to make excuses, but an example there is that we had Christine seconded as our project lead, finance lead, but then she also became the CFO. This is, earlier this year. Had to wear both hats. Definitely hasn't helped us on the project. Very, very busy with both, wearing both hats essentially. And just, yeah, please.
I'm just going to, it's been thanks. I'm just jumping in while I can. We did our best at the time of Christine getting promoted into CFO, patching together resources, and in hindsight, not the best strategy. So Conrad, Christine, and I, and Robin have been sitting together to talk about reconfiguring the resourcing for the program to make sure that for the balance of the program, or the project, we have the correct resources, and the one being, and it's resourced through the project budget, is going out for a dedicated finance lead to alleviate the pressure on Christine, and we were trying to patch it together with finance resources that exist, and it was too inconsistent. So learn by doing, but we're definitely addressing that resourcing side of it going forward.
And it wasn't just Christine, we lost other key staff members, our payroll manager, and there were some other senior staff members, so it hasn't been easy from a resourcing side. And it's been challenging to to hire as well, finding people that have the experience and that can afford to actually come here. Has also been a challenge. So, you know, and finance staff are busy at the best of times. So dealing with their busy times, their business cycles has also, you know, should have been planned for more detail, for sure. What we have done is we've brought in a new senior project manager. He's been very helpful. He was helping us more on the sidelines in the past as a external consultant. Well, we've brought him in a much bigger role now, and so he's helped us develop a new schedule, really ground truthing our resources, our resource availability, and what, you know, how long some of these tasks should be taking. So not just for finance staff, but even for IT and for our consultants, really getting all of that into a schedule. Just for Unit 4 Business World, we now have a project file with, I believe, over 500 lines. So very, very detailed schedule. And he's done this before. He's worked with on a UBW implementation in Port Coquitlam, as well as I believe he helped out with the project in Sechelt, and I think there's been others. So he's got a lot of experience, particularly with this system, and so he has an understanding of what, you know, what the tasks involved are, and the effort involved, what it takes. So we do have a new schedule, and I believe our current plan is much more realistic and achievable, and focuses mainly on those UBW work streams. That's really I feel like that's the hump we need to get over. It's the big system, the platform, that everything else is going to be connected to. So moving forward, so we are taking steps to be successful. So we already talked about better project resourcing while still managing budget. So we are also bringing in a consultant to help with our financial year end. We talked about bringing in a full-time finance lead and bringing on this senior project manager as well. We're moving forward with a much more realistic go-live window for UBW. It is August, September of 2018. That's taking into consideration business cycles in finance, including their year-end tax season, budget season, vacations. We're also looking at going live with both work streams much closer together now. So really avoiding bringing up one part of the system and then another part later. Essentially what that requires is massive integration with our current finance system that we can just avoid. And so moving away from that staggered approach a little bit. The other thing I could say here is we really want to make sure we get it right the first time. What we don't want is a mini Phoenix. So it's, let's say the Phoenix word. We are also redeveloping our schedule for Tempest. So that's happening right now with that project manager. Our goal is to keep momentum on the development management work stream, and really continue on with that work, and then go live with it, you know, get it kind of ready, and then go live with it after UBW is live, shortly after UBW is live. The municipal modules, like I already mentioned, again, those involve the same finance resources. So the municipal work streams for Tempest are going to have to be implemented after we're live with UBW, and we can't have 3 work streams hitting finance at the same time. And so that's unfortunate, but we are going to have to move that out. This also means we're moving out the recreation system project. There is an effect on the TTP. I'd like to still move forward with an RFIQ for recreation, but to actually do an implementation, I think we're taking on, we don't want to take that on while these other projects are still in midstream. So I have talked to Recreation about this. We're also in touch with other municipalities. We're watching what's happening with the rec system upgrades in other municipalities. So we're learning from that as well. And we do have a support contract in place with our current vendor. So we were managed, even though the system is at end of life, we managed to get an updated support contract. So if anything goes wrong, we still have that. And so the other piece is that this does extend out our DTP timeline. We're doing more work to get this figured out, really define and assess what the new timeline looks like. Likely it'll be a year of additional TTP, but we will come back to you with a much better timeline for you to review. I can speak about budget a little bit. Extending the TTP out really doesn't affect budget too much because those projects are still, they have a certain cost and that cost isn't necessarily going to change. Extending our financial management solution out is going to have an effect on budget, but it's manageable. And so we have budgeted for backfill, we've budgeted for Christine secondment for consultants. So from that perspective, we're doing well. I would say where we're going to see an increase is with our Agilix implementers. There's going to be more of their hours required. But I believe we're able to mitigate that to some degree. So budget isn't a huge concern at this point. Timelines are. And so that's pretty much it for.
Thanks, Conrad. I think we all knew this wasn't going to, particularly the first part wasn't going to be easy. It's hard to understand the complexity of the system we had and integrating it into a new system. And I know we're all excited about what the outcomes of that new system can be in terms of customer service and internal efficiencies and transferability and all those, like the outcomes are great. It's really challenging, so I appreciate the update. With the learnings that we've gone through on this first phase, which is arguably the biggest phase, the whole financial back end of our whole corporation, basically, leading into the front end stuff. Have we learned, like, do you anticipate some of these other modules may actually go a little bit faster based on what we've learned in the first one? And so do you think there's time to be made up? Like, I know we're pushing out the start of these, but do you think through all this learnings, there may be time to be made up in those other ones? And maybe that's an irrelevant question, but.
It's a tough one. It would be nice if this helps us gain that momentum and then it's plugging in another system, plugging in another module. But
You suspect
my
it's not.
learnings have actually been that I'm overly optimistic on scheduling. But I appreciate, maybe there's some, we're hoping that there's efficiencies that come out of this and momentum that's gained so that when it comes to a solution like something for HR, functionality for HR, we can use the platform.
Yeah.
Right?
So if we go live on this module, August, September, I think you're there. How, and you said we were pushing out recreation, all the other ones. When was recreation next module supposed to start and when do we anticipate it now starting?
We had recreation originally,
Or
I
whatever.
think it was second quarter 2018, in the very original roadmap.
Right.
We then shifted it out to third quarter. We've gone through some iterations of this schedule. It's really hard to say now. We're still doing that detailed scheduling for Tempest. I'd like to see us implement in 2019, absolutely. I can come back next time with a better
Yeah, it'd be good to
timeline.
see the actual timeline,
Yes.
new timeline all written up.
Yes.
That'd be good. Councillor Kent?
Yeah, I don't think there's any surprises here. I mean, it's a massive transition, massive switch from old and outdated software to something considerably newer. One question I had, what's it, and I know this is kind of a ballpark question, but the end users, which is staff, what's the learning curve like on some of these modules for them? Is it fairly steep?
Yes, especially in finance. The system they have now versus the new system, they're very, very different. And we're seeing that there's a steep learning curve.
And one other question, you said you were looking at other rec models. Do you have one that you're looking at similar to ours with the same modules connected to the main platform?
There's a couple of, there's 2 or 3 solutions that I would say are at the top of the list. None of them are partnered with UBW, but UBW is designed for integrations. And so finance absolutely has to be involved when we go down that road. And we want to make sure we get that integration right, and the finance piece is sorted.
I'm just curious to see how their systems work and react, and sort of give us an advance warning of, if we're incorporating those similar modules together. Maybe there's some lessons to be learned, as you said, from that.
We're watching very closely.
Debugging.
We're watching very closely, and we know there was a decision made by that Delta initiative, which a bunch of municipalities got together and selected the rec system that they wanted to go with, and we're watching those implementations. Yeah, it's an interesting, it's interesting. I think there's some advantage to coming in late.
Yeah,
So,
that was my point. Good, thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Schmidt.
Thanks, Conrad. Amazing job. The amount of work that goes into these massive projects, organizations that are our size that have to go from analog to digital and also take processes usually have a lot larger teams than you've been working on. So I'm amazed at the amount of work that's actually been done with your team and how well it's been done.
thank you.
I'm interested in the change management piece because building processes and doing organizational change at a technological level, the technology tends to be worked on and then implemented. And I know that you have change management up there, but I'm wondering what that looks like interdepartmentally. Like, as you change processes, is everybody brought on at once? And do you feel like you're well supported to do the change management piece?
We have a change management lead. She's fairly new to that role. We've provided some training for her, but she's very dedicated. But it does take buy-in from all levels, and especially managers. We feel we have that buy-in. We're going to departments as early as we can. We've been going out to Public Works a fair bit. Hey, this is coming. Are you ready? How do you do the timesheets now? How do you see it in the future? Here are some options. So we're trying to connect with areas early and let people know about the change early. You're right. We have a very small team. There's more we could do for change management, for sure. But
So as far as succession, I worry, because of the small team implementing, it's such a massive project to actually, what you're doing is you're integrating the public into our processes, which is so essential. And having the information technology platform integrated into such a large, there's so many moving parts there. Is there a way that people can be brought in, while you're doing, to integrate into processes? Because I think about the healthcare software that's going on right now that's failed to implement multiple times because they didn't integrate with the users enough in the beginning. So where does the public come into the change management? Because we're doing integrated processes for the public. Where does the public come into that change? And do you manage a system and then try it out and then go back and fix it, and then how does that look like?
the public piece, I think we're relying heavily on the experience that Tempest has, and they're kind of the go-to solution in BC. Lots of municipalities have them, and they have that public portal. And I think Tempest, what I like about that solution is it's much more out of the box. You're not customizing everything like we sort of are with UBW. And so they figured some things out, and they're telling us, this is best practice, this is how what your portal's gonna look like, and this is how it connects into the organization. So I think there's so much experience there that's I think we're gonna benefit from that, and that's really where I see the public starting to see, to start getting involved into and start to get linked into our processes.
Thank you. Appreciate your work. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you. Thank you for the update. I was just trying to get a sense of what training staff looks like. Is this one day, 1 week, 1 month? Are they able to do other work at the same time? Are they exclusively on this? I'm just trying to sort of get a sense of that.
So those super users, the key users in finance, for example, they're being trained now as we speak, as they're testing the system. There's somebody sitting with them, a consultant that will be sitting with them if they run into issues, training them as they go, as they're testing the system. So there's a lot of desk side time being spent with those key staff members. Further out, staff around the organization, there's still work to be done, but there's videos being developed. So as we have high-level training sessions with finance, they're actually being recorded. There will be more time obviously spent with staff, and I'm not sure what that exact training schedule is going to look like, but I can come back with more info on that. So finance staff are getting desk side, hand-holding type training. Staff around the organization, I need to go back and see what that testing plan, what that training plan actually entails.
Linda?
Mayor Heinzman, just to follow up on that, those are a lot of the resource challenges that we bumped up against, with recognizing how much time we need to take our staff out for the training and the testing, and then trying to backfill that with getting their own work done. So it is rather intense in the finance project specifically. And then to Conrad's point, in terms of the rest of the organization, we'll detail that out.
Yeah, well, thank you, Conrad, and everyone involved in this. I know from the outset, this has been a goal of the districts of councils to bring all of our systems into the 21st century. And that's a lot of work. It's hugely complicated. The end result will be massively beneficial, and I think not only from capacity and an efficiency point of view from the district, it allows us to leverage a whole bunch of different facility within the public realm as well, and the public should see discernible district differences as well. So it's hugely important. It's really a priority strategic goal, and it'll take as long as it takes to do it right. So we appreciate all the work and the patience and diligence you guys have been putting into this. It's been great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate council support. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So moving on, we have the item 3.2, which is the downtown parking study, and we have Dave and team. Dave, do you need a few seconds to set up, or are you good to go?
I think we're pretty much good to go here.
Miriam from Excel as well. And as usual, our community meetings are very open and inclusive, so if you do want to ask questions or participate, just put your hand up and come and join us at the table. So Dave, whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Dave Merrow, Director of Major Projects at the District. I have with me Graham Schultz from ISL Engineering. And today we're going to walk through the findings of the 2017 downtown parking study. So in 2015, the district developed a parking strategy, and one of the key areas of focus of that parking strategy was to sort of assess and manage parking in the downtown area. So to address some of the key actions from the strategy, the district retained ISL to undertake a downtown parking study. And with that, I'll turn it over to Graham, who will walk through the study and findings and recommendations.
Great. Parking. Yeah, Graham Schultz
You got
with
the hot
I.
seat there, Graham.
Pardon me? Yeah. So I got a cold glass of water. Graham Schultz, thanks, Dave, thanks, Mayor Council, for having me here today. So I work with ISL. Our office is downtown Squamish here. We're just on 2nd Ave, walking a bit away from us here. So this is certainly in our wheelhouse and in our ballpark
In
as
your
well.
hood.
Our hood, so we know what really what's going on, and certainly live the challenges that we see today, and some of the opportunities as well. So I'll just jump into it. I got about 20 odd slides here just to kind of go through to summarize the report that were in your package there. I have with me as well Bort Chan. He is our professional regards to traffic. So certainly, when we come to question time, I'll fill as many as I can, but Bort's here as well to help out in that regard. Okay, so jump right in. So the agenda today here for us is a little bit of background, some of our objectives. I'll define the study area, which is obviously downtown, but further broken down a bit, how we looked and collected data. There's obviously mostly interested in what the results were, so I'll dive into that. Some of the highlights there. We have some suggestions for possible improvements as well, and some of the tactical responses, which is really more the what can we do quite quickly to help address some of the concerns that we see. Okay, so the background is, we're a growing community, and we certainly need to accommodate our current parking challenges as they exist, and look for those opportunities as well. We are growing. We know we're growing with lots of infill development, so we've got to look for our future development demands as well, and how we balance that with our transportation and transit objectives. We have certainly areas of the downtown core where we have heard that there is lots of concern from the public with the parking opportunities and the supply downtown. And as we grow as a community and to capitalize on our tourist activity, we're bringing more people into town as well. That in itself brings some challenges and increased demands. And we can't deny that we are continuing to be a community that commutes north and south as well. So there is utilizing certain areas for parking lot build destination employment areas. And further, the 2016 parking study recommended that we collect some data, which we currently don't have. So let's get some baseline information into the community, of which we can set the stage for today, and then we can build a program moving forward with something to back us up. So that's really what the objective was here, was to collect the information, get some real-time data, and understand what the average and peak parking occupancy rates were. What is the turnover percentage, and in addition to how often they're turning over, or what percentage we're getting turnover, is how long are people staying where they are parking throughout the downtown area. So there's some data that we were certainly looking to collect, and with the objective of establishing what are the how much parking do we have, how are they being utilized today, and then on a high level look at what some future considerations, how are we going to deal with parking in the future here moving forward in some areas that we have challenges, or some areas that we don't, and with that then provide some recommendations. A lot of the recommendations that we have here are not, to be clear, are not definitive. On this block, we need to move to angle parking from parallel. That's not within the scope of the work, but there are some kind of approaches to improving the parking in the downtown. That was within the scope here. So the scope of the area, the study area, was essentially all of downtown, which is, call it Buckley Street, the rail track, and everything south. From Blind Channel up to the estuary and all the way down to the New Westminster right away. So this kind of defines it. As far as how we were collecting data and looking to kind of evaluate the various utilizations or turnover rates and that, we broke it down into 3 areas really. And these are the kind of the really important ones to think about when I'm going through the presentation today. The biggest one, of course, is the downtown, or one of the most, well, there's 2 really important areas, but downtown commercial is really a hot spot area to look at. So that is defined by Pemberton Ave on the north, Main Street on the south, and then encompasses Cleveland and 2nd Ave. So when we're kind of moving through, just keep that in your mind. The downtown is really Cleveland and Ave bound in the north and south.
And Graham, just to clarify,
Yeah.
there's 2 municipal parking lots that one actually you can't get on from Cleveland, it's off of Loggers Lane, actually both off of Loggers Lane, but you're including that in this piece?
No, so further on we identified those 2 particular areas in the road right-of-ways. We've identified those 2 areas as off-site. Those are the only 2 areas that we have as
I
off-site.
just wanted to make sure that was clear for.
Yeah, no, good point. We do have a slide that shows all of the off-site off-street parking areas. When we go through the numbers here, all we're looking for is on-street, on the district right-of-ways, excluding those 2 areas on Victoria and is it Main, I believe, that have the right-of-ways near the waterfront there. Okay. Yeah, so just a collection of.
Oh, no, I should clarify.
Yeah.
You're just talking on streets, you're not talking about the municipal parking lots beside the Copper Coil.
Correct.
And the one along Cleveland between Pemberton and Winnipeg.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we are.
And let alone the
clearly-
ones that are on either side of 1F Park. Those
Yes.
are separate altogether. as well.
That is correct,
I
yeah.
just wanted to make sure all
Yeah.
that was clear.
Yeah, thanks. The downtown area, as we know, is a collection of land uses. It's quite a spread, commercial and some residential, of course, and then we have the municipal buildings in there. So the other big area other than downtown commercial is the downtown residential. This is basically, again, Pemberton to Main, everything west of 2nd, call it 3rd to 6th.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry?
We have a lot of parking on Bailey Street, so I'm curious why the residential area map doesn't line up with going right up to Bailey and capturing the Eagle Wind development, and why the boundary was struck this way.
Yeah, so we have a 3rd area called the other area, if you will. Those are the extremities of what's not shown here. You could include that, I guess you could include through Eagle Wind onto Bailey, in which case then the downtown area could include everything to the south as well. This is directly related, I don't have more of a good answer than that.
But there is a 3rd area.
There is a 3rd area.
It's included in the other,
100% yes.
but you just chose to sort of focus on a more concentrated downtown area.
That is correct, yeah. The results as we present them do have, when we talk about the average downtown utilization or the overall average of anything, it includes all of those areas. We have specific breakdowns for the downtown commercial and the downtown residential, but we do have overall, which does encompass those areas as well.
Okay.
The entire study area.
And Graham, I am gonna go to council or anyone, if there's a clarifying question, but I don't wanna get into opinions or anything like that yet. But if there's I wanna correct a fact or clarify a fact if there, that's the case, Councilor Scott.
Please do.
So you've included Eaglewood Boulevard, but why wouldn't you have included the rest of the residential in the downtown?
We do. So the actual study area itself, sorry, is,
I think you just answered that, that was Councilor Waite's question.
yeah.
No, but the other way as well.
So when we look at the, through the study, and we look at overall utilization for the downtown area, it does include Eagle Wind, it does include Bailey, it includes those areas. When we break things further down into what we've called just the downtown commercial or the downtown residential, those are just the definitions of that. We still have included that other data in the overall.
Okay, I guess my question is why have a breakout of the Eaglewood Boulevard when that parking is specific to?
I don't think it's specific to anything, it's just public parking.
The boundary line needs to be drawn somewhere. Perhaps it's a little arbitrary, but
It is totally, it's, okay.
Other than there's a lot of on-street public parking in that area, and so,
Yes.
and it's very, and it's very easy to walk to, Save on Foods area, and,
Yeah, it's
We
certainly.
can argue the boundary line, the data doesn't change.
Yes, you are correct. It does encompass that. Why is the downtown residential or specific to this an exclusion of that as a definition of the downtown residential? Yeah.
I think
Yes,
one,
sir.
sorry.
No, yeah, you're gonna have to come to the table. Yeah,
One
when
of, the
you're-
one of the reasons we're doing the downtown residential area is we want to see any impact from the downtown commercial area impact the downtown residential area. I know that there's some more on downtown residential, but they need to be further away from the downtown commercial area. So we focus on this area is want to see what's the impact, whether they have impact. That's why we actually doing more survey on this area. We're actually doing 6 to 8 o'clock evening survey specified for this area.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, good question. Okay, so those are the two areas, and again, as we kind of move forward, we'll be referencing a lot of the downtown commercial, which is this, and then of course the residential area defined here as well, in addition to the overall. So what we did, of course, the first thing that ISL did was we went through the entire area of the study, and we identified all of the on-street and all of the off-street parking. There's a slide that follows that summarizes all the numbers for you, but this is how we approached it. So we did the initial survey. Then we did a utilization survey for the downtown area. This is the entire downtown area. That was purely looking at utilization. Is this street 50% occupied or not? That type of thing. Then we went in just for the downtown commercial area. We looked at what is the duration, what is the turnover we're seeing, and we went through every 15 minutes and fully documented all of the parking stalls and identified through license plate, the last 3 digits of the license plate, how people were staying and how long they were staying. That was quite important to understand when we talk about time restrictions or and then for those studies we chose one weekend day on a long weekend. It was a Saturday, the farmers market was running, so it was quite a vibrant long Labor Day long weekend, and we chose a random midweek day as well. And both those studies ran basically right from morning right through to the evening, as Warwick said, in some cases in through to the evening, the night as well. So we got a fairly good cross-section. Again, it is just the 2 days, but it is a fairly representative of a typical weekend we would find. This is the breakdown of the downtown, of the overall downtown area and the number of stalls. We got about 1,100, a little over stalls all in, including Bailey, including everywhere. You can see in the downtown commercial area, we're about just shy of 300. That's somewhere between a quarter and a third, or if in that Main Street or Cleveland and Second Ave world. And then the other residential portion we had was about 4, and the remaining areas to the north and the south about the same. As an illustration of the time limits, you can see we have a 2-hour time limit common in everywhere in the downtown core area, downtown commercial rather, and then through the downtown residential areas we have some, not all, certainly most are not restricted for time.
And so, just to clarify, this is on roads, on public property,
Correct.
not on in-mall parking lot or
Correct.
private property, or this is just on, not even, this doesn't even include our off-street parking.
That is correct.
That's only on-street parking.
This is only on-street parking.
Yeah. Just want to add one more line on the others 90°. That's mainly for Bailey. That's why there's a number of the angle parking, but 90° of that area.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we sit on those. Yeah, so as Borg said, we did break down for information, paralleling and Annie, as you see there. Okay, so we start drilling into some of the data now and what it actually all means. And again, when we start looking at this stuff, I'll try to identify the overall versus the downtown core versus the other areas. And looking up at the screens, a little bit harder to read, so I'll try to do my best to identify that. So what we're looking at here, if you look at the left graph, that is the weekday data that we found. The red line being, we have utilization on the vertical, and we've got time of day down on the horizontal. The red line is downtown commercial, the green line is downtown residential, and the blue line is an average of all of the downtown parking areas, all of them together. So again, utilization based on time. What we find on a midday week is for the downtown core, there is an increase of utilization in the downtown parking stalls in the downtown commercial area in and around the 10 o'clock range. And then that maintains itself just throttling underneath the 70% percentage range till it hits about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it diminishes down. Now again, that's Cleveland second, all the way from Maine to Pemberton on the north there, as an overall. The residential, downtown residential, is consistently tagged at less than 50% for that whole other area that was identified in the chart. On the weekend, you can see the utilization is a little bit higher. It goes into the 70%, mid-70s in the downtown commercial area. And then there is a fairly sharp diminishing utilization as you get to about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Residential, again, fairly consistent with how you see it during the midweek day at throttling about 40%. And overall, both utilizations, when you look at the overall downtown, are in and around the 50 to 55% range.
So before you go on.
Yes,
Mr. Schwab.
please do.
Time of year was August?
Yes.
September.
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 There's two, there was one,
17th and the long weekend.
2nd and 17th. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
In the study, there was an August date as well. It doesn't matter, September and what was the
September
other?
2nd and September 17th.
Yeah, the inventory was taken earlier.
Yeah.
The number of
Okay.
cells, so we could prepare our sheets.
Excellent.
if you will.
And the September, was it a nice day or a poor weather day?
This sheet here is in fact a shot of the ISL guy there, and it was a sunny day.
Beautiful sunny day.
Beautiful sunny
People
day.
can ride their bikes and walk around and,
Yeah.
right? I think that if you, okay, I'll say that.
Okay, yeah,
I just want to make that point, that weather makes a difference.
absolutely.
I mean, the intent is to pick your peak point, being the long weekend, when it's unlikely to be higher, perhaps Canada Day would be, and then pick an average day. You're always going to be susceptible to,
Right, I would have picked an average day, like a sunny day, and then picked a rainy day in the winter when it's mostly locals. Because it may have shown exactly the same range of data, but it may have actually been like today.
we will need to repeat this in the future.
Question about the green line. Interesting how the long weekend, the residential line actually goes down by statistically significant amount.
It's actually very stable, more or less. The
You think
green
that's-
line
The green
is
line?
similar
It's
that one.
considered
A
pretty
little
stable.
bit lower, probably because people go out for somewhere or some other one. You can see that the
They go away on the weekend,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but the usage is actually less in the residential area on the weekend.
and you can see
Yeah.
the big drop
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
wet.
yeah.
So,
It is slightly, you're right.
yeah, slightly. The big drop of the wet line is also because of the farmer market. So more like the farmer market's end, so
Yeah,
the people
so you
left.
see.
Obviously.
I mean, yeah, it's a good testament to the value of the farmers market in the downtown. I would say.
No question about it, yeah. Put it to that. Okay, the next slide here is really a kind of a numerical of the graph. So these are just, again, the real numbers that we found. you know, there's average on the left there, kind of downtown core throttling around the 60%, and then it's both weekend and weekday kind of spike in and around the 60, 75, certainly spiking higher on the weekend there. Downtown residential, pretty consistent right across the board. Minor percentage increases there, but you know, it's not swinging 10 points. And then overall, and again, keep in mind, this is all encompassing for the entire study areas there. A lot of the questions and a lot of the perspectives that we have are the observations that we actually see on the ground. And again, these slides are overalls. We drilled into it further, of course, and looked at what do the individual streets and sides of the streets and that, how do they perform for these various time frames. So these next two slides, and they are challenging to see, but there's color coding here, and I'll highlight them for you as to what are the observed utilizations, oh thank you, yeah, for the various streets. This slide is for the weekend, and it is quite clear, it's not clear actually, but in the printed document it is quite clear that Cleveland, between Winnipeg and Victoria, for instance, is a hotspot. Yeah, the lines, I'll just give you the ranges here. So the red areas are 80 to 100% utilized. The orange is 60 to 80. Green areas are 40 to 60. And blue are less than 40% utilized for the study period. Okay, so so this is a really good graphical representation of where are the hot spots in town. And you can see that in the downtown commercial area, there are certainly centralized hot spots on Cleveland there. In the time of the study, however, there are certainly areas that are underutilized, such as 2nd Ave in this case, between Victoria and Winnipeg. So again, this is a really good representation of where, in other areas, we see some residential areas that are highly utilized as well. Other areas, not so much. We have a similar, yeah, I'll give a moment just for some people, if you haven't seen it yet, just to kind of digest that image a bit, and you can focus in on some areas. We have a similar image here for the week.
You got a question?
Oh, sorry. Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
no, Billy.
Yeah.
Is any particular reason why there's that one red hotspot in the residential area? Could you discern why that particular block in the residential?
Yeah, we asked it the same question. When you see this one?
It is tough, and you'll see, I'll just jump to the next slide as well,
Okay,
because what shows up here on a weekday is between that same block of Victoria and Winnipeg there. You can see 3rd Ave and 4th Ave have hot spots on them there. And as to exactly why those are red midweek and not red on the weekend was a bit of a challenge, and we wondered if there was construction going on that was not undermined, for instance, Center Point or what have you, that had construction traffic there, that kind of thing. There could be very localized influences on this here. But that is, say, looking at why is one particular street red or not, that's...
I did check the data. Even we have the average, we have the peak. We also have a low number, low utilization rate. But found that they also so wet in the road. So that means the car actually parking for the whole day,
Right.
or the whole survey period. So they didn't go out, they didn't leave, just park there. Maybe the Western or maybe visitor. We don't know that particular thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, hold on, Greg.
Yep, please do.
The ditch, were you marking ditches and stuff, because
Yeah.
the red on one side, there's only parking most of the way on 5th Avenue on one side, where there's ditches on the other side.
Yeah,
there's
so
no
very
parking.
observant there. That's absolutely correct. So there is, where the black dash is, there is no parking available because of drainage ditches there, no shoulder. So thank you.
Councilor Vice.
So with the red going into the residential areas, Would that show people parking there who might work downtown, for example? Would that be impact parking from the downtown commercial area?
That is possible, Councillor Rice, that is
But-
possible.
But you can see that in the downtown Second Avenue, they do have the green line on the Second Avenue between the Victoria and Winnipeg, right? So that means people why they will not parking on downtown, parking further? Maybe because downtown only 2 hours.
Exactly.
That's why they
Yeah.
maybe don't more. Yeah, that's good point.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is a a very telling slide when we start looking at where should we focus some efforts in the future on redistribution of parking efforts, that kind of thing, maybe get people to kind of push away into some of the green areas.
So one more question on these slides.
Yeah,
Councillor.
the temple, was there an event at the temple that day too? Because the temple parking overflows onto Fifth too.
Temple on the is it? On the left side. Temple.
Yeah, I don't see anything that's showing up in the temple on that would be on 5th there.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's usually when the street fills up too, is if there's no parking.
hmm,
Anything, depends on what day, there's a,
Although it doesn't look like, I mean, there's nothing around the temple on any of these maps.
there's
Right,
not.
yeah.
Oh, I understand that on a temple event time,
Yeah.
there'll be like.
Maybe on Sunday or evening, we didn't catch it,
Yeah.
this one.
And I think someone just mentioned, Canada Day,
Yeah.
skew all these numbers, an event
Yep.
near the temple. There's always gonna be these extenuating events that are
agreed, yeah.
dramatic.
Okay. Yeah, no, this one warrants a lot of critique and discussion for sure. I will move on to the next, however. This is a downtown commercial area. And again, this is looking at how long are people parking within the downtown commercial area. We threw down the 65 percentile mark, and you can see that, again, there's the weekday in blue and the weekend on the right in the red. You see that most people, 85% of them, are parking there kind of an hour and a half or less. Hour and a half or less, and they're kind of moving on in the downtown commercial area as a whole. There is 10% that, sorry, we have the 2.5 hour mark.
And just on street.
Just
It's
on
on
street.
street again.
All on
only.
street.
Yeah.
So if you look at the regulatory posted parking time restriction of 2 hours, you can see that, they're very close, as a matter of fact, in both slides, but 89% or approximately 90% of the people are obeying the 2 hour restricted time. Meaning that 10% are not obeying the 10%, the 2 hour time restriction, they're staying there longer than. The numbers are not that different in the long weekend or in the weekend. Again, 85th percentile sits in around the hour and a half mark. And again, just shy of 10% are staying longer than the 2 hour restricted parking time limit, or vice versa, 90% are obeying that. So the next question would be, well, who are the offenders? Where are the offenders of the 10%? So we looked at that, and this is how the numbers break down. You might have some visions in your mind of where those offenders are, but the reality is of what we saw, there is not a clear offending block. It is a fairly even distribution of where the people are staying longer than 2 hours. The blue numbers being the weekday and the red numbers being on the weekend. Now, Pemberton and Main Street are fairly minor, but overall on 2nd and overall on Cleveland, fairly even distribution there.
I think the worst offender was in and around Municipal Hall.
Council meetings go way too long.
It was a living here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And also that's a long weekend, that's a 13th week, also because of the market, maybe farmer market. That's why people
Right.
park more than 2 hours.
Okay. Okay, so those were kind of a lot of the big takeaways. So in summary, I guess, on just parking summary stuff, our survey. So again, overall on this whole study area, we found that the parking utilization didn't exceed 60% in both the weekday and the weekday and weekend during the peak hours, overall, okay? When we look at the downtown core area, the utilization peaked as high as 75 on the weekend and peaked at about 68 utilization on the weekday. Residential, again, kind of peaked at about, didn't quite get to 50% utilization when we look at the overall area there. We also, as I mentioned, for the 2-hour limits, we found that about 90% of the people were obeying that and about 10% were staying longer than the 2 hours. We talked about the inventory for off-street parking. These are those lots that we didn't account for in parking. We didn't look at this for utilization, and we did not look at this for turnover or duration. These are the other areas. There might be some that we didn't quite capture, but this is certainly a vast majority of the on-site surface parking that we identified here. Most of these would be private lot. There are a couple that are not. The Main Street and Victoria Ave extensions onto the Blind Channel right-of-way, of course, or district right-of-ways, and then, of course, Farmers Market Lot, by and large, private.
The loft is temple.
There you go.
So I didn't hear that, I'm sorry. That last comment.
Oh, the
Oh,
temple.
the temple on the loft.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so while the main focus of this whole project was to look at parking on street, we did look at the bicycle, do an inventory of some of the bicycle parking available throughout Squamish downtown area. Here is a basic clustering of the bike racks that we noted during our walkthrough. A decent clustering in around the Cleveland area and along Main as well. Just kind of west of 2nd. This is as we know, to help reduce the number of vehicle trips to the downtown. We would like to improve the bicycle facilities, parking racks being one of them. There's some opportunities for improvement here as well.
Are there any covered bike racks?
That is not something I think.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's a rhetorical question.
Yeah, okay. So some improvements we could make, and again, this is, we didn't look at utilization of the bike racks or anything like that, but these is certainly we can look to continue to densify the racks, the high use locations, some lockers, points of interest, which might be, water access points, trailheads, public buildings, that kind of thing, or large commercial centers. We can look at reviewing the new development bicycle parking requirements, and yeah, certainly look if there is a future dedicated transit hub, transfer station in Squamish downtown. We would look to bring that to the forefront. So, as I mentioned at the outset, we were looking a little bit into the future. There was no analysis of what is the parking requirements for the future when development comes in or tourism increases, but we did highlight some areas that would cause increase, and then basically what would be some high-level impact reduction mechanisms, if you will. Tourism and commercial growth, certainly some infill population. Well, residential is next, I guess. So on the commercial and tourism end, we expect that midday peak hour, and certainly on the weekend, we would expect higher levels of tourism influx into town. So impacting, or to reduce the impacts of that on parking, on street parking, would be to A, consider the off-street parking options, or 2, look at improving the regional transit system. So let's get people kind of parking outside of the downtown and bringing them, or outside of town period, and let them come in using transit, if you will, as opposed to driving. Residential parking demands, obviously there's lots of infill growth we're seeing in Squamish in the downtown area, and the surrounding areas too, for that matter. Impacts would be looking at the parking bylaws, parking requirements through bylaw, if you will. The addition of adding some time parking, we identified that there was some limited amount of 2-hour parking in the residential areas. Perhaps there's an expansion of that, and certainly paid parking initiatives. Less popular, but
Hold on a sec, Councilor Kent.
Just wondering if you factored in there some of the upcoming proposed commercial developments downtown and what impacts they may have given some of the variances that we've allowed on some of those buildings?
well, I guess the short answer would be we didn't look at what are the effects of all of the infill developments and how much additional parking that would bring into the, we did not look at that. This was really a baseline study in that, so, yeah.
Question?
Yeah, I'm just interested in how, I reconciling wintertime parking with nice weather parking is huge, because people can take out, we do have relatively easy active transportation and bike rack use in the back downtown. I know a lot of it, as far as the difference between short-term and long-term parking, like, is it expected, I guess, that people are to park in residential neighborhoods instead of the 2-hour parking for employee parking?
Okay, you put 3 questions in there.
Yeah.
So
I-
weather,
Data on
The difference
rainy
on-
day
yeah.
weather, data on rainy day weather, employee parking, long-term parking, and
and some of these may be addressed further on in the, report didn't go into detail on them, but
Yeah.
I'm sure the conversation will go there, so if the report doesn't answer the questions, we'll have a conversation about it after. Yeah.
Yeah, no question. I mean, seasonal influx of parking is going to be something that obviously wasn't looked at here, but certainly would have an influence.
I want to mention about the employee parking is because we're doing all this on street in downtown, that's only 2 hours. I think the employee probably be using the private parking lot in area. So it's not affecting our result much about with the employee parking. We expect it.
Yeah, so the data, most people, I think it was 85%, are moving before 2 hours.
Yeah.
So it's unlikely that the 2-hour parking is being used by employees.
Yeah.
And some of the longer parking may be used by employees. But
Yeah,
is a
maybe
much
outside.
smaller
Yeah.
amount within the 2-hour parking. So they're parking elsewhere,
Mhm.
either in our lots or other private property.
Yeah. Okay, looking at the downtown commercial area specifically for on-street parking improvements. So we this is summarized in a following chart as well. Looking at parking regulation changes, configurations, this is talking about angle parking versus parallel parking, adding some imposed fees for parking on street. So these are kind of measures that could help alleviate or redistribute some of the downtown commercial hotspot areas that we're seeing. These are some areas, again, in the downtown area where we see not all suggestions here would work on all streets. Certainly this isn't a definitive list or a breakdown of where things could be, but it's certainly on a high level our take where improvements could be made.
So you
Look
just,
at it.
can you mind just staying there just for a
Yes,
second so
certainly.
everyone can have a
Yeah,
look?
yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, it was quite interesting to see how many are 30-degree parking, how many are 45-degree parking, 90-degree parking,
Yeah.
parallel parking.
It is, and when we start looking, the next stage would be, well, really are some of the improvements we look to entertain, and you go from parallel to park. The council does an excellent job on the active transportation. We don't want to necessarily limit bike lanes, but
Pedestrian access,
but
yeah.
reconfiguring, take up more space often, so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so, for off-street parking, there's certain areas, people may not recognize certain areas as possible off-street parking, so some wayfinding there, and for that matter, perhaps wayfinding for on-street, but definitely if there are lots available, you'll want to direct people to those lots. Off-street parking, again, that goes into development permits, variances, if you will, what have you. And then possibly a standalone structure down in the downtown area to help alleviate or bring people off the street as well. All of these kind of summarized in this table here. And then finally, of course, one of the tactical responses we could do is look at alternatives to just the 2-hour parking if we find there are certain areas we would like more turnover, or we find people have been turning over by and large, and we hit 75% of the people are an hour in response, and that's the majority. Perhaps you make that the requirement, if you will. So adjusting the 2-hour time limit down, and possibly looking for areas where there is no time limit, adding a time limit. Increase the off-street parking for sure in areas where we have you saw the high utilization, and of course improving the bike facilities in the town area. And naturally, with bikes, we'd also like people to walk more, so make those corridors attractive to people, safe for people, and convenient. So that is the last slide here that we have. We thank you for your time, and if there's any questions, myself or other staff can help you out.
Thanks. Councillor Clark.
Thank you. I've got a few here. It's nice to see a local company doing this for him. I was looking in there, I read this morning, when I read it and I didn't have my pen to underline it, there was a phrase in there that talked about creating parking until such time as the population transitions to a different mode of transportation. Does anyone remember that sentence in there? It might have been the staff report, but so I take that as a driverless car and bus. I mean, I'd like to see the driverless car be referenced in here a lot, because we are relying on that in the future. Now, I see one parking guy shaking his head, that's good. And in the report it talks about there's really no parking problems in the downtown, and I've been beat up over that for the last 5 years. When I say there's a parking problem, and I get beat up because there is no parking problem. So I don't know how we get that message out, but I don't know, we got to get that message out to the people that complain. And I know you talk about reviewing the development permit area and the zoning bylaw to make sure that we plan in future buildings to have enough parking. So I'm just wondering if, I mean, that's going to be on our list of things to do soon. And putting off a parkade as long as possible, that was written in there. The elephant in the room for me is we've got 600, maybe 700 units through the process and in construction. And of the 700 units, 300 or 250 of them are 3-bedroom with 2 parking stalls, and 200 of them are 2-bedroom with, or 350 with 3-bedroom with 1 parking stall. And another 250 of them are 2-bedroom with 1 parking stall. So that to me adds up to about 500 cars that aren't going to find a place to park. We just approved the homeless shelter over here on Main Street moving forward with 46 units and 14 staff with 1 parking stall. So I think whatever we do with this parking strategy, we have to take all those things into account. Otherwise, our numbers we're using historic numbers already. I mean, it says we don't have a parking problem, but when these things are all built in the next 3 years, is that when we will say, well, now we have a parking problem, or will we say that before we find that out? And that's the the kicker for me. And, 46 units right across the street over here with no parking stalls. And 16 staff.
Gary?
And probably no cars either. Those folks are
That's a
homeless.
probably.
Having a
That's a
car is the least of their problems. I mean, with respect to the number of units coming on, we're going to be providing new parking, yeah, at one space per unit. As that happens, it's not like there won't be more parking coming on. The zoning bylaw is coming up in 2018. If at that point council wants to change that one to a different number, council can choose to do that. So that's part of the park. That's exactly what this says, is we should look at that. And if council wants to change that, they can. If they don't have to change it.
Well, I mean, what I don't get is doing a parking strategy without using those numbers now. I mean, so this is,
And Councillor Pryor articulated some numbers that I haven't heard before, and maybe he compiled that list just doing his own math, I don't know, but it would be interesting to get what those actual numbers are.
I don't know if we've done that math, but in respect to Councillor Pryor, he may have a better memory than I do of all the
He might
numbers
have
we throw at council.
Purposely did the math, did you purposely?
well,
Or you just spitballing?
if I did the math, it would probably be more. I'm just going once around
Okay, well,
town.
let's do the math, is my
Yeah.
point, is let's actually understand how many units and how many stalls are with the units, and the unit bedroom count, I think, is a relevant one, too. And I believe your report, I can't remember if it was in the staff part or your part, talks about how to be more efficient with, if you have a business, can they share with residential so that, the school district office's parking lot is empty at night and the brew pub is full at night? Is there a synergy there? And so I can't remember if it was your report or their report or just past discussion.
We did mention about that one.
Yeah, but those are the creative things. But I think the point of Councillor Pryor's question is interesting and worth doing a bit of the analysis to understand that possible effect in the future. Because I think that's a relevant understanding.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to get more difficult as we don't deny that. I don't think the report denies that. It says at this point in time. But if we add another 1,000 units, it will be an entirely different ballgame. So there is a plan for looking at a parkade. The plan for this year coming up with parking strategy implementation is where could a parkade go, how much should we charge cash in lieu, cost of that parkade, and then the recommendations here is we look at, well, where could we change hourly limits? Do we need to? And I say to Councillor Chappell's, what we don't want to do with that is displace parking into commercial parking into the residential area. So it's a bit of a balancing game.
Sorry, was there any other?
Well, it would be nice to have that number, and I'm pretty sure that I'm close on those numbers.
Thank you.
If I may, Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to make it clear that the parking strategy does recommend that a utilization study be done every 5 years. So every 5 years we'll do a similar exercise, and not saying that we shouldn't look at the numbers that are upcoming between now and then, but units that have come online then and projections for the future can be assessed at that time as well.
Thanks, Jason, and then I have Karen.
So question for the consultants, based on your experience in a community, well, in any community, what would you consider a utilization rate that is approaching sort of, failure rate? What percentage is that usually?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because that's depend on the different area. We did a similar study in the Chilliwack. I think most of the commercial way is about 80%, 70-80%. But for the West End, probably about 50% weekday or something. So very similar. Our data, I think 75% utilization rate is in overall. I agree that some location we will find that very high condition, high number of parking there. But a little bit further away, you will find that there's a lot of the empty space there. So in average, 75% I think is a reasonable number. If more than 80, that's why it's showing the red color in it. They probably will need to start an alarm or something.
Okay, and just on the idea of the new developments and parking. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think that we have done any variances for residential. I think we've only done it on commercial spaces, if I'm correct on that, so I don't know where.
In terms of
That
variance,
is
it's
my
no,
recollection too.
it's just our current regulations is what Council Powers were referencing,
Right, okay.
current requirements.
In my view, I think what we'll probably see as we do get another 1,000 units in the community in the downtown area, guess what? We're gonna have an area where it is, all the amenities are gonna be here, and it's gonna be way more realistic to have a one-car household, even if you have 2 adults in the household. And I think we should be moving towards that, because if we don't do that, and every household has 2 or 3 cars coming into a downtown area that has 1 entrance point and has a limited street capacity, I mean, we're not gonna build more streets downtown, we just can't. So then we're gonna be talking about traffic. We're gonna be talking about how bad traffic is and how it took 10 minutes to get out of downtown and all of those things. And so rather than go in that direction, I'd like to see us sort of, really move aggressively with these things. And again, driverless cars is one of it, but an interim step is car shares as well, which I was talking about. And it's great though to have the really detailed analysis, and I think that helps us to ground truth a lot of this stuff. But let's not forget, for every car that we put in a garage, I don't necessarily think that, I think in our community, there are lots of different options in terms of neighborhoods. If you are a 2-car family and you want a garage with 2 cars, maybe a different part of the community is more appropriate in terms of housing type. But let's also not forget there's people for whom, the cost goes to consumer. When you build a parking space, it's $40,000, and that adds on to the cost of housing. So if we can save people $40,000, maybe they'll prefer to opt for that choice.
Thanks. Karen and then Peter.
So thank you for answering Councillor Blackman-Wool's question. That was mine, is where's the breaking point? And also, we may need to do our utilization study sooner than 5 years, depending on how quickly things get built. So I think we need to be flexible with that. I'm curious about why we didn't include some of the off-street parking. Why is it considered different than on-street parking in terms of overall capacity? And is it just because of the length of time that people can park there, or how do we incorporate that idea?
Our scope is only to on-street, first thing.
Yeah.
But I understand what you say. I will say that the on-street private lot is difficult to survey and difficult to count because privacy issue or something like that one. And also some of them is I know that we did some study in Richmond before. They do a private off-street parking, is especially residential. It's very difficult because either you need to go to permit or you really get inside. Public on-street, public off-street, I think maybe we could consider in the future or something like that. But this study we didn't consider off-street that one. Maybe something like that. But we did go to the off-street when we're doing the inventory. It's not that many people parking there, or maybe even people didn't know that they say public off-street parking. They can park there free or something like that. They don't know about that one. So my answer is that we didn't do it this way this time, but in the public off-street, I think it's good. Public or private off-street may be difficult.
Yeah.
Maybe difficult.
Public off-street. Okay. And then to staff, as part of our parking strategy implementation this year, wayfinding and knowing where the parking is was an issue. So do we have money in the budget for this year to start addressing that? And also, does the parking strategy implementation, when we're looking for locations for a parkade, are we also considering where the transit hub is going to be?
Reverse order.
You can answer them in any order you want.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
Yes, to the last question, which was transit hub with a parkade. So yes. Okay. I'm sorry.
Wayfinding to parking.
Wayfinding, yes, well, remember there was that increase to the public works signage budget. And yes, we did leave 100,000 in the
Wayfinding's still in there, but
Mhm.
we haven't finalized the budget, but it's still
So there's at least probably $120,000 with respect to signage and wayfinding generally in the community. So yes, we have budget scope to deal with some of those issues in 2018.
Okay, and finally, on what timeline and through what process would we consider changing parking time frames, like switching to 1 hour in some of those high Cleveland Avenue zones? How would we engage the community? Is that just a decision of council? How would we
Yes.
move?
It's a decision of council.
Well, but will we do engagement first, or will we just decide? I wonder what the process is for that.
I would suggest that we work at least with the BIA in terms of the business community downtown as our first line of public engagement, then generally with the community. So we're probably looking at Q1, Q2. We would want this to be in effect prior to the busiest season in June, July, if we are going to make any changes. So we consult, come back to council, council would confirm or deny those recommendations, and we'd get going.
And one good thing about studies, we know where to put our bylaw officers now. We know where the vendors are.
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, just further to Karen's comment, I think sooner than 5 years on the utilization assessment. And I'd like to see incorporated into that, because every one of the developments we've approved downtown has commercial space on the ground floor as well as residential. So I'd like to see some of those impacts of that as well, because they will roll out into those numbers and increase them.
You're on the list, but you're not yet.
Here's what I know. I know that 40% of people commute out of downtown in the morning and leave either on transit or driving downtown, but they still drive to transit, even if they're taking transit. So they leave the downtown core. I'm just thinking about the one corner that has 80 employees that all have to find all-day parking. We have 20 spots that are off-street parking that are not labeled 1 to 3 hour parking. So now we have our employees downtown that are coming. Yes, we all try and take our bikes in the summer months. And September is awesome. We can all commute. But in weather like this, I know that a lot of my employees, 23 of them, take their car downtown and try and park as far away as possible so that patients have parking. But then we have patients coming into the downtown, the medical offices, the professional businesses downtown that are in need of employee parking, like all the professionals that work downtown, all the businesses that work downtown that need employee parking. 1 to 2 hour parking isn't adequate. And the density that we're planning in our downtown is a lot. We have one way in, we have one way out. We can put people in residential parking. There's, if we cover the ditches, there's lots of other options. Putting in infrastructure so that we can actually cover ditches and have more off-street parking. But I look at the way it's rolling out on Bailey Street, where every townhouse has 2 people with kids that are moving their kids around town in the rain and in bad weather. And to say that everybody's just going to have 1 car and walk to amenities doesn't mean they're going to walk to employment. So having 2 cars in a family these days in a rural community, because we're still rural with no transportation and limited funding for transportation. We wait an hour for a bus, which means that people aren't actually going to take transit. And I'd like to actually, like my fellow councilors, I live in the downtown and I walk every day. We don't have adequate sidewalks. We can't walk around, and I like the suggestion of actually having a pedestrian-friendly downtown. That would be another thing that we could actually look at in the future, because even just adding amenities so we can walk places or get to the active transportation route safely. But I know that my kids ride around and almost get hit by cars a lot in a downtown. So there's a lot of issues, not just with parking, and doing parking in isolation of all the other factors and all the other variables is just makes no sense to me. I'm really glad we have a baseline. This is an excellent baseline study of how many spaces we have, where we can look to actually move parking infrastructure that we can actually look to fill in to create extra capacity. But to me, I just see this behemoth of density coming into the downtown with very little transportation planning and trying to increase things like bike lanes on roads that may not have the capacity, because if we're gonna increase bike traffic, we can't, that isn't consistent with the same amount of parking. So a lot of these are and/ors, like having bump outs on Second still reduces capacity. We don't even have space for bike parking on Second Avenue, we'd have to reduce parking capacity. So there's a lot of questions
Yes.
that still need examination, and including all of these new variables is a conundrum. And I appreciate that staff has got this baseline, but we've done all this density and planning with good planning intentions, like density walkable communities are amazing. But in a rural community, I wonder what it looks like when you have to commute to work and get your kids around a 12-kilometer span that is not necessarily friendly for active transportation and parking.
So, this analysis was meant to give us some data to help leverage and inform decisions in the future. And it is one piece that dovetails with the active transportation plan, with our transit futures planning, all these things that we know we have to work on. And they're part of our drainage strategies, our variety of infrastructure issues. This is just one tiny piece of the information needed to make those decisions and to actually achieve those directions. I wanted to hit on one thing that Councillor Chappelle talked about. She didn't reference it specifically, but I'm assuming she's talking about the Centre Point building. Not the Centre Point, the Cornerstones building, the building you're in.
All the
Yeah, so the Cornerstones building.
professional offices down there.
And I think they're actually a big contributor to the people who are parking for longer than 2 hours. And so I'd like to look at some of these hotspots or emerging hotspots, like Cleveland between Winnipeg and Pemberton, I guess. And in particular, I'd like to maybe have a conversation about the parking lot, the district-owned parking lot where the farmers market is on a Saturday, making that a 2-hour parking. And I think this ideally relieves a lot of pressure. It's not 3 hours right now.
It is, I just parked there yesterday.
Is there a sign
Yes.
that says 3 hours?
Yes.
Should be 2 hours. And that will help with patients and clients in the Cornerstones building, as well as ideally some of the coffee shops and the more retail-oriented in-out. Employees for that building can park in 8-hour parking elsewhere, or no limit parking elsewhere, and walk a block to work, or ride their bike to work. So I think I'd like to discuss that with council as sort of a spot fix. I think there are some problems, and we've seen the problems in Eagle Wind with, is the design too close to the road and there's no parking in the front, or is it too short and then you're blocking pedestrian access? As Bailey Street gets built out, that's going to be a problem. So I think what I'm looking for is through this analysis that we anticipate better these hotspots so that we're reacting to them before they become explosive spots. Because I think people do, particularly for people who have mobility issues, pregnant moms, moms with kids that have to get them all bundled out of the cart, parking is an issue for them. So how do we make sure that that accessible parking is more available in those high needs areas, and able-bodied people or people who are working for 8 or 10 hours in an office choose different choices on where they're parking. So I think I'd like to look at some of those quick solutions that maybe weren't contemplated in the report too, as well as some of the ones obviously I think in the report. As the report outlines, we have a mishmash of parking all over the place. It'd be good to create some standardization in terms of, is it a 30 or a 45? Is that just predicated on the width of the road, or did someone have a different measuring stick the day they painted the lines? I don't know. But if we could create some consistency and create some opportunity, particularly for patients in and around the medical buildings, I think that would be an easy, quick win that we can achieve. And we need a drop-off, a patient drop-off. I mean, these are parking issues beyond just the study, but we need patient drop-off in front of the medical buildings, and we need more of the short-term parking in front of those buildings that have high volume turnover and high needs. So, I mean, those are some of the solutions I want to look at. Does Gary or Graham or anybody want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly, we should look at that on in sort of a holistic basis early in the new year then, so that we get those solutions together, think of it comprehensively and get at it sort of late Q1, Q2 in terms of restriping, re-signing, retiming, talking about the elephant under the table, which is paid parking. We're going to have to start that conversation soon, and that typically is a real popular conversation to have. And then there's, you
Well,
get into...
or we should at least have a tipping point, like at when we achieve this utilization rate, that's when we have to start the next level of the parking solutions. So and that's what this is, baseline is designed to help us get to that point. So go on, Gary, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I think we need to sort of come with a comprehensive suite of options for council in Q1 and get going on that in Q2.
Yeah, thanks. Ted?
Yeah, thanks. Well, paid parking for sure. I was going to suggest that the lot across from the center point be a paid parking lot, because that's where all those staff go and park. And we're going to need some money when it comes time for building our parkade. Susan mentioned isolation, like doing the study in isolation. It would be nice to know. We live in a town where lots of people commute. And when I think of all my acquaintances and friends, I don't know any of them that have one car other than Karen.
Peter? And Susan?
And so,
And me?
What do you guys-
Jason?
That's actually pretty.
Jason's a two-car family. Anyway, so that's a statistic that, I mean, we should be kind of looking at when we do a parking strategy. Like I remember when we talked about the center, the Helping Hands Center going in, and the public came in and talked to us and were worried about parking. And there was a couple that lived in one of the buildings there. They both have cars, and they're already having trouble parking their cars at nighttime. So I think we should, if we're going to try and analyze how many two-car families there are, or how many commuters are because we're a commuting town, I do think that car share is something that we've really got to get into our zoning. So when we look at our zoning bylaw in the DP, we got to really start pushing that car share. I think that's a really valid thing. And that's about it. The driverless car, I'm counting on that driverless car.
Susan and Doug.
Handicap parking, making sure that we have a lot more handicap parking as things start to densify as well. And my concern is that if we're going to push people out into either we're going to be in the core or they're going to be in residential neighborhoods. What about permitting, like actually extracting cash and permitting people that are working full-time in the downtown, charging a nominal fee, and they can park 8 hours in the downtown? If it's not a problem, then so that we recognize and can measure the amount of employees that are actually coming into the downtown and needing parking. Then if we have 3-hour parking, but you buy a permit, then we can park for 8 hours. As opposed to something like, so it's 3 hours and we bring it to 2. Does that resolve the problem? It doesn't resolve, that doesn't resolve the problem, but a suite of those changes. But employee permits seems like something that you could do in the downtown and make it that it can't be on Cleveland or 2nd Avenue, but maybe it's in the district parking lots on the end of the roads, and the farmer's parking lot. And then we can actually be able to measure how many employees are in our downtown. And it's also good data to have, is how many employees are coming into the downtown and parking. And then it keeps them out of the residential neighborhoods, because and also making people that buy condos aware that that it's all municipal parking. But I think that before we put meters on Cleveland Avenue, which takes in change, we permit our residential parking and keep track of things and put that money towards the garage. Like, we're gonna have to budget for some of these things. We can't just keep talking about them, and we can have car-to-go and we can have all those things. All it costs is money. Like, we just budget for it and it happens. We can't just keep saying it as a nice thing. We have to actually budget for it. So maybe we look at next year's budget to include car share, because it costs $35,000 per car plus membership. So if the taxpayer is willing to do that to send people into town to work, or maybe it's just for local runs. I don't know how it looks in a rural community like this. Most of them aren't willing to come up, but you can buy them, so you buy into the model, but it takes capital.
Thank you. So I think the report accomplished one of its purposes, which is to generate a discussion. So, and you can see all of the various issues we have. But thank you for the report, because I think it does answer or start off the discussion where we are today. For me, this is, I mean, it's obviously a large discussion, more than we're going to have time for this afternoon. And for me, some of the points I think are that there's probably no one solution. There is going to be, one of the things that I think impacts parking more than people might realize is the commuting. And one or both of the occupants of a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment or so going off somewhere to work, which is not presently served by transit. We don't have a robust transit system like the City of Vancouver or the Metro Vancouver, maybe never will. And so while we try to steer people to bicycles and public transit and so forth, I think reality says that we're always going to have to face the fact that a significant number of people are going to be using vehicles for the foreseeable future. Some of them may be driverless, some of them may be shared, but nevertheless a lot of vehicles. And so I think for me, it's a series of things. First of all, I think when we do talk about the zoning bylaw, we're going to have to consider putting more parking spaces for residential inside the developments as opposed to some other place. One of the challenges with that is you provide 2 suites or two spaces in a garage, and people fill them with other things and then want to park in the street. And we saw that with the conversation about the Helping Hands building. The people that were complaining were people that had a garage, they just didn't use it. So I think we have to be aware of that. I think the other thing is we're going to have to, I think, inevitably, although I know people don't like this, or some people, plan for some kind of structure or structures, some kind of public parking facility. The report talks about a couple of lots on Cleveland Avenue. For myself, I would not want to see a parking garage on Cleveland Avenue. I think we'll have to find other places for it. They're just generally not the prettiest thing in the world, and so I'd rather not have it on Cleveland Avenue. But I think what we should be doing now is identifying locations where people can drive in, park their car, and then walk to their ultimate destination, which is relatively close. And that may be one or maybe a couple, maybe one by a transit hub, maybe one somewhere else at the other end of town. But I think we have to start planning for that. And I think the zoning bylaw is going to be critical. I think we are going to have to push people or push developments to provide more parking. We are steering, or trying to steer and create more employment spaces in our downtown area. That inevitably means more customers and also more employees. And we're going to have to provide somewhere for them. We grant a lot of variances to get commercial space downtown. But ultimately, we're still going to have to deal with the issue. And while we try to do all these other things with active transportation and so forth, I think the reality is we're still going to have to be providing some kinds of facilities for people to park. And preferably, in my mind, it's sort of at the perimeter of the downtown area, so we don't end up, like Councillor Black and Wolf was talking about, with some kind of a real traffic problem, not just a parking problem, where everybody's trying to drive somewhere up and down Cleveland Avenue. So, thank you.
Thank you, Karen, and we're way over time. We appreciate, and if someone from the public does want to ask a question about this or make a comment, please just put your hand up.
I appreciate in the report the comments about bike racks and trying to standardize, because that would be helpful. But also for staff, you know, we're talking about a parking hub and a transit hub, and I think with our active transportation plan, we need to think about, and the mayor asked a provocative question earlier, if we have any covered bike parking, which we don't. But if we think about people using Third or eventually Loggers Lane, and then Main and Pemberton are the main active transportation separated bike lanes, is putting covered bike parking at those hubs so that people can, in all weather, park comfortably, whether it's just themselves or with their kids, unload what they need undercover, and then walk to where they want to go, which may give us more flexibility in terms of changing how and fitting in more parking on some of our streets. So the way I see it is this is one piece of the puzzle, and as we make improvements on transit and active transportation and facilities, we start to address more and more of these issues. So this is a great baseline, which I appreciate having. And we just need to keep remembering that if we're talking about parking, we're also thinking about transit and active transportation all in the same conversation. Car shares, all those sorts of things. It's all part of the solution. And you know, in the same way that building more roads doesn't improve traffic, building more parking stalls doesn't necessarily improve the parking situation. It just creates more demand for parking because it's easier, people think it's easier to park. So we just need to be careful of that and providing multiple solutions to this problem, not just a parking solution.
Okay. So, Gary, there are some short-term recommendations in the report. I'd like to add on consideration of the two district-owned parking lots, I guess east of Cleveland, west of Loggers. So the one at Copper Coil, the one down between Pemberton and, you know the one I'm talking about.
Yes.
Not necessarily the ones on the Macklemore Channel, but those two be considered part of the 2-hour parking. I think we want them to be more for the commercial businesses as opposed to employee parking or long-term parking. So consider part of that as going to a 2-hour. So Gary, I guess the question is, would you then look at the recommendations and would staff start to, if we accept this report, is your next, are you planning to implement some of the things? Obviously there's some long-term, bigger strategic financial implication decisions down the road. But what's your next step in terms of staff? The recommendation is that district accept for planning purposes the downtown parking study. What is your next step?
I think what we would come back with in Q1 is where we're going to change hourly limits on the street and in the district lots, where we're going to put our employee parking that's perhaps extending or providing clarity on where you can have extended parking, which may lead to wayfinding and signage improvements, where we're going to put accessible stalls, handicap stalls, and where do we need better bike parking facilities?
Covered.
Open brackets, covered, closed brackets. Those are the half a dozen things that I think we need to assemble into a sort of an attack strategy for Q1, Q2.
Did I hear just Q1, not Q2?
Q2.
I heard Q1.
I'm going to blame the weather. It's going to rain in March and April. We won't be able to. Striping is really tricky to do in.
Oh yeah,
in
and certainly some
weather.
of the implementation pieces need fairer weather,
We
but
could change the hourly stuff relatively quickly. The difficulty with that is getting consultation. It just takes a few weeks to get consultation with the BIA.
yeah, absolutely. We want to do this in concert with BIA for sure, and the chamber and others. Yeah, it was interesting. I think this did validate sort of that 2-hour parking was a reasonable amount of time because 85% of the people were under 2 hours. So I think that seems to be an appropriate threshold right now, as opposed to 4 hours or 1 hour. But as things get more pressure, we can consider 1 hour in certain areas, I guess, is what we were working on.
Yeah, I would add, you know, what qualifies that is not the fact that you hit 85% of the 2 hours, that might be 85% of people are willing to abide by the 2 hour, but we hit, I believe it was almost 75% were an hour and a half or less,
Exactly.
which is the key one. People aren't getting close to
Yeah,
that. So.
1.5 hour, something like
Yeah,
that.
well, yeah, that was the point of, you
Oh,
you
yeah,
articulated
yeah,
more
yeah.
clearly, but that was the point I was trying to make, was that most people are well within the 2 hours timeframe, so that seems like a reasonable
Yeah.
parameter. Okay,
Yeah.
so there is a recommendation that the district of Squamish accept the study for planning purposes, and can I add, and staff will bring back an implementation plan early in 2018.
Yes.
Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Rice. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Why don't we just take a 3-minute, 4-minute, 5-minute break for people to refresh. We are back in our committee home meeting, and we are on a 3.3, which is the economic development update. And we have Kate Murphy here. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Heinzman and Council. My name is Kate Mulligan. I'm the Economic Development Officer for District of Squamish. And to my right is Alicia Woodside, Economic Development Specialist. And we're here just to give you an update of our activities since I started in February through to the end of this year, or almost the end of this year. So we thought we would organize this presentation in some themes and lessons learned and where we're going. And we basically came up with 5 themes that we thought explained our work, where we were coming from and our work moving forward and where we're going. I just wanted to preempt this presentation. Economic development often has proprietary information involved, so this presentation is open to the public. However, if you have questions about particular businesses, I'll just ask that you refrain from asking me during this presentation, and we can move into a closed meeting if required, if council desires. So just to start off with, the themes that we are exploring in this meeting are capacity and effectiveness. So when we look back, in February when we joined, the department was consisted of an economic development coordinator, and there was no EDO, and it was typically reactive in nature just because of capacity issues. There were some forward-looking strategies that were in development, but in terms of processes and tools and resources, there was a limited ability to be proactive. And then when I look at process and value, there wasn't a lot of integration at the time. Economic development was situated at the Adventure Center. When we started working with the other departments, they weren't really clear on what our role or mandate was moving forward. So there was a lack of clarity. And a lot of our partners weren't exactly sure where economic development was going. In terms of policy and legislation, we didn't provide a lot of information or articulate how we sustain or support sustainable growth within the existing legislation in a lot of our communication products. And in terms of awareness and communication, we found in our research, in terms of the data that we have been collecting, that there is a general low awareness in terms of the services we provided and what our strategy was. So we're moving forward, and then in terms of role and leadership, we didn't have an established mandate at the time, and there was no clear leadership assigned. So moving forward, we wanted to talk about sort of where we've gone in 2018 and where we're heading. And in terms of capacity and effectiveness, some of the work that we're doing is looking for new tools and resources. And that's really in an effort to provide increased efficiency and effectiveness in our service delivery. And also, we wanted to increase capacity for our department, considering we're a rather small department. We've been working really hard at figuring out innovative ways and tools that can help increase capacity, even though we're a small team. So we have 2 tools that we're implementing in 2018. One is a CRM. So it's a customer relationship management system. And that's so we can track and manage leads and opportunities. As well, we're refreshing our economic development web portal.
And that's really going to help provide more tools, more resources, and business intelligence to our existing businesses and potential new investors. And we'll dive a little bit more into that in detail as we go on in the presentation. But first off, I was going to talk a little bit about what 2017 has looked like in terms of supporting our business community and also attracting new investment into the community. So I'm going to talk about two different types of service we provide, or actually clients, I would say. One is leads, and that one is very much focused on either helping existing businesses scale or grow, or prospective startups, or investment into the community. So in terms of leads, this year we've had 63 leads, and that consisted of 21 existing businesses that we've supported and 42 new businesses. And a new business is either a prospective business that's interested in relocating to our community, a startup business in Squamish, or new investment. When we look at leads by sector, our leads by sector, we've tried to organize these in, we didn't get down into the industry level so much, but broader sector levels. Tourism, we had 9 leads, service and retail, 9, and professional services, 7. Services and retail includes obviously stores, retail establishments, can be janitorial services, but when we look at professional services, that typically is architects, engineers, surveying, and tourism is a combination of hospitality, accommodation, and attractions and activities. You'll notice there's some clean tech leads and advanced wood manufacturing. When I get into the next slide, I just want you to note that some of those leads are where we've helped existing businesses in terms of providing services. And then in other cases, they're new businesses, either interested in relocating to Squamish or starting their business or expanding to Squamish. In terms of the services offered, 43 were focused on investment, 16 were focused on expansion, and 4 were focused on retention. And I'm going to give you some examples of the type of services that we provided. So in terms of detailed services, the top graph is detailed retention and expansion services. So location assistance, we had several inquiries over the course of the year looking for what is the appropriate zoning, where can I find land that's zoned appropriately, and then in terms of process, legislation, and information, that was how do I apply for a business license, is there legislation or that I need to consider in terms of opening or growing or expanding this business, depending on the type of business, general information about the community. And the data information side, that's really focused in on, I want to grow my business, but I need to know more about my customer base, or I need to know about a particular data that would support my business needs. And so we're providing general information about Squamish. Same on the detailed investment side. A lot more why Squamish, to try to make a business decision as to why it's the right place for them to locate or grow or expand into Squamish. New opportunities is slightly different. So new opportunities is really organizations that would provide a new resource to our business community, tools or training, or it would be a new relationship with a local organization, or not a local organization, could be a provincial or regional or national organization. New associations that have formed as a result of some of the work that we've done. such as the Squamish Craft Beverage Association, and new opportunities for economic development. So one could see UBC perhaps as a lead because we're interested in having a campus at the oceanfront. However, there's other projects that we've been exploring with UBC that we would call an opportunity. And to date, we've had 45 opportunities since February. And these require quite a bit of work. Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium, we're planning events in 2018 with them. They are an association or consortium that supports the manufacturing sector. In particular, they provide training, they provide data and support to increase advanced manufacturing capacity in local communities. The BC Innovation Council, we're looking at piloting training programs with them to help our entrepreneurs in terms of growing and scaling their businesses, as well as accessing funding. The Craft Beverage Association, we're actively participating. We supported the initial development of the association and supported in terms of providing some considerations around the formation of the association. And this provides them a platform to collaborate, whether it be through marketing and promotion or events, or even when they have issues that they feel need to be addressed at the municipal level or higher. Go2HR, we're exploring opportunities for data and training, and they are an organization focused on tourism employment, and they are not-for-profit. So those are different examples of some of the relationships that we are working hard to develop. In terms of process, we've been working really hard internally. We have been working with community planning quite a bit, integrating into their pre-application process to make sure that we're informed when there's new developments that include commercial or industrial employment space. They are working with us to get our feedback on what we think of those applications, which is great. And at the same time, we're attending their weekly planning meetings. We go to the first half hour every second week, and we provide a cross-update between teams. We work on special projects, and we're also creating collateral to give to our planning department so that they're armed with stuff when people walk in through the door, and they can say, have you connected with economic development? Here are some of the services they provide, and so on. We've integrated into the council reports much better, I think, in terms of having a section that specifically addresses economic development. And we have ongoing tracking and reporting that we're providing to our CAO, as well as what we're hoping to do in 2018 with our council. In terms of external processes, we're working really hard to develop strong partnerships and collaborations, in particular with the Chamber of Commerce, Tourism Squamish, Community Futures. And we've also worked really hard to develop a steering group and getting the right organizations to participate that are really key in terms of sustainable economic development. In terms of policy and legislation, we're working really hard to clearly articulate our legislative boundaries in everything we do. Not only saying we can't assist business, but the why piece, and then understanding how our partners then can serve businesses in places where we can't. So understanding our roles and how we all work together in the ecosystem in Squamish. In terms of using data and research to inform policy development, that's a place where 2018 with the BC Real Dividend and our local data initiative, we're going to be working really, really hard at getting great data to help inform those policy decisions, whether it's with planning or whether it's economic development or in other areas of the organization. We're really hopeful that the work that we do there serves the entire community. So we just thought we'd give you a little example. And this is when we worked with planning around downtown rezoning. So what we did is we worked in collaboration with community planning, and that was to support downtown rezoning recommendations. We developed a methodology, an approach and methodology, and that was really to calculate the current supply and demand of commercial space, but as well to project that out to 2040 against the population. Did I get that right? Or 2036? So we used methodology that was consistent with other work that we do at the district, such as our OCP, using the same population projections. We used different sources of data, including our business registrar through StatsCan, to get a baseline, an estimated baseline of commercial space. We used other studies to inform in terms of what the per person ratio of space looks like today and what it will look like in the future. And we used our census data, and we were able to provide an estimate in terms of what supply looks like today and what it's going to look like under low, medium, and high growth scenarios. So we worked really hard with planning and supported them in that. And the employment strategy is a place where we would like to continue this work to actually be able to address this at a much larger scale for industrial and institutional land for Squamish. In terms of awareness and communication, we're refreshing and we are targeting our website and our collateral, and we have 3 key target audiences that we focus on, and that is starting a business, growing a business, and investing in Squamish. But also as subcategories to that, we can't neglect the fact that we need to talk about working in Squamish as well as living in Squamish, because our labor force is incredibly important and we need to nurture and support that. In addition, we're really articulating our mandate and our role in our economic action plan and all our communications, and we're working with our stakeholder organizations to drive awareness. So whether that's the work that we're doing, the initiatives that we're doing, going out through the Chamber's newsletters or through special events, as well as we're working hard to have a communication strategy that addresses those target groups specifically. So here I'm going to hand it over to Alicia, and we're going to hope that the internet works because it didn't work before, and she's going to show you what our new website's going to look like in general. Awesome.
So just before I begin, I'd like to just let everyone know that these are preview sites, and most of the content I'm going to show you, we literally just got access to test sites in the past few days. So they're still going to be undergoing a thorough review. So it's kind of our first demo. So exciting. So this is an example of what the new website is going to look like. And the nice thing is it's going to be living within the existing District of Squamish website. And it's going to be replacing the current economic development section that we currently have. And so it'll be living within that current space, and like Kate mentioned, it's going to be having these themes, start, grow, invest, live, and work. And the idea is that it's going to be a platform for all of the tools and resources that we're rolling out in 2018. And then the nice thing about having it as part of our current site is that we can link within all the other resources that we have at the District of Squamish. So that's what that's going to look like. And then I have, okay, yeah, this is, just give us one. Okay, we just need to pull open the internet.
I'm holding questions off to the end, but I do have Councillor Kent and Councillor Chappelle.
Oh, we could do questions while you
Yeah.
set that
Why
up.
don't we do questions? Great, awesome. Councillor Kent?
Okay, this is great and a terrific presentation as always, Kate. Thank you, both of you. And I did see some of this at the update to Digital Strategy Committee the other day, and I know that also within this website, the digital strategy document will be embedded.
That's right. We're going to have corporate documents as well that are economic development focused as part of the ecosystem within the website, but we'll have a specific call out to access our sort of more corporate documents that from a policy standpoint they'll be housed.
And I can't think of a better person handling both than yourself. I had a question though. You showed some graphs there, and one of them was new inquiries for business, and you showed the spectrum of what those were.
Sure.
And then the following slide was those who were in those same categories that were exiting. Did we have any exit interviews for some of those people to find out why they were leaving and if there was any commonality?
Why they were leaving?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think, so the slides, I'm sorry, I don't have the slides up.
Existing. I don't think
There's
it's
existing, there's,
I don't think it's.
no, there was no exiting.
Didn't it say, oh, I see.
Existing.
I read it.
Existing.
I don't have my glasses on.
Yeah, it's
My bad.
existing businesses, so the leads are broken up, by, new investment to Squamish, so those are businesses that are considering moving from somewhere else into Squamish, or businesses that are thinking about starting, or individuals that are gonna start a business in Squamish, or just investment in terms of new money that wants to come in and invest in businesses, or maybe succession. So that's sort of the new business. The existing business is our local business community that reaches out to economic development. And I wanted to preface all of this with, we've done very little outreach ourselves this year. We were getting ourselves into a situation where, from a process standpoint, we're able to service our existing businesses that are coming in versus going out and actually reaching out to these businesses without any sort of process or collateral in place. So I do want to say that 2018 will be much more proactive, where we'll have a strategy to reach out to our existing business community and work with them much more.
Sorry, my bad. I didn't see the
But
S
I
here.
think it's an important point.
It's an interesting question about the leads and
Yeah,
the success of the leads and whether or not they actually
right. And that was my point.
Turn
I
into
agree.
something.
turned into
Threw around the ball.
expansion or turned into a new business or a startup.
So I could probably speak to that a bit.
I mean, some are still in process too, so.
That's one big thing, is the window of economic development in terms of a lead. A lead is not generally one interaction, two interaction, it's a relationship that develops. So, we start developing that relationship, and it could take, in some cases, 2 years before you see the actual realization of what that relationship has turned into and what it means from an economic standpoint. Other ones are much more simple, where, they really just need some basic information or some steering. Perhaps it's connecting them to the right individual at the province or federal level to access funding. And those are maybe a little bit more straightforward. There is some work to be done in terms of understanding our impact, and we have a survey that's open right now. It's supposed to close December 31st. I think we're going to extend it because we don't have quite enough completes. And that is looking back from this year, 2017, in terms of what the business environment was like, the climate, and then actually in terms of what kind of services they're aware of that economic development offers, and how we actually assisted, and what the satisfaction was. And then in addition to that, we have a forward-looking aspect of the survey, which looks at what would you like us to do, and how can we best serve you. So we will have some of that data for sure.
Thanks.
And it might be worthwhile doing some exit interview, or whatever you want to call it, about businesses that started, looked promising, for whatever reason dropped off, and understand the whys of those. Would be
Yeah.
Excellent information.
Thank you for saving me from my full time.
I would say anecdotally,
Got my back.
location, actual access to space is a continued struggle
Yeah.
for our existing
Particularly
and new
depending on the
businesses.
business,
That's number one.
Questions, Councillor Chappelle, and then I have Councillor Carr.
First, thank you, both of you.
We're not done yet, so yeah, I think unfortunately, I think
I think
the
she's
wrong
going to get-
presentation got loaded into the
Right.
last updated version.
That's okay, I just.
So I
She's
think
just filling the time to help Alicia.
No, I'm gonna keep going, I'll keep going,
Okay.
yeah.
No, I really think that the path that you're on to actually connect businesses with economic development strategy is an excellent one.
So,
Setting the new website,
Let's
great.
focus on questions,
So,
and we'll
commercial space.
let her finish, and then we can do comments.
So commercials was much faster without interruption. Commercial space, this evening we have a 20% recommendation.
Sorry, I'm losing focus. So 20%.
I totally have lost focus. Commercial space, tonight we have a 20% recommendation for C4 zoning. Is that for just ground floor commercial space, or is that for second floor commercial space? Is that overall commercial space?
From planning?
Yeah.
Did you want to sleep? I think
It's
you did.
a-
It's
Overall.
overall, yeah.
overall, so you
First and
could do
second
just
or
ground
third or
floor.
fourth.
So it could go anywhere, but it doesn't make a difference?
It could be a rooftop patio bar.
Has to be at grade
Yeah.
for the street frontage, but beyond that, it can be wherever.
Because there was discussion about making it the second floor
Okay.
as a requirement,
Yeah.
but I don't think it went there.
Yeah.
And the exit entry survey, I do actually, picking up on Pete's thing that is, might be valuable, is exit entry surveys. And then maybe we should extend the survey past Christmas and
Yeah.
New Year's, like even into the second week of January, just because holiday
I think
season.
that's what you just
Yeah,
said.
we just,
You just said
we
that,
are
yeah.
But
extending
you're
it.
extending it to December 31st.
No, that's the close of it, they're extending it past December.
That's right.
Okay,
That's
so it
right.
was gonna close on December
That's
31st, but you're extending it.
Yes.
That's right.
I just heard the close on the
Better now.
December 31st.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, yeah, and the other thing is, I guess understanding the right, keeping planning in the loop, like with understanding the business needs as far as
Yeah.
like, the professional space versus ground floor retail space. And the other thing I'd like to keep on, I was asked to put a motion forward tonight, I think it's not a good idea, but the craft beverage district is not zoned for craft beverage drinking, so we should probably do something about that. And this needs to be a fairly timely thing and is also involved with planning. So right now it's zoned industrial, and they can't make money because they can't serve the, they need it to be zoned for something that actually
It's
allows
zoned.
for,
Well, and
it's
I
zoned
don't,
industrial.
I think the valuable lesson here is that economic development and planning for
Yes,
the first time are
exactly.
actually having these progressive integrated meetings. And the strategies are starting to dovetail.
So what I'd like to see is that the local businesses, that, yes, I appreciate that economic development is dovetailing with, but the challenges that businesses are having and that you're bringing to planning, I'd like to see some timelines on those challenges coming forward so that we can communicate to businesses as a council when those challenges are expected to be resolved, or if that's something that may be in the hopper already.
And maybe the rest of the presentation talks a little bit about some of those goals and timelines. We'll go to Ted quickly and then we'll do the website.
Well, yeah, thanks.
Questions, we'll do the comments.
On one of the slides you had there, it showed 9 people looking for land
Mhm.
and 0 found any. And I wondered if that had something to do with zoning.
Zero found it in?
Well, that's what it said on your slide, right there.
No.
Location, 7 people looking for location, succession.
This is what people came to us for services. So they came for location advice. The top graph is detailed retention and expansion services. So that's where people have asked us for particular services under that
I think you need to
category.
explain the word succession. It
Yeah,
doesn't
I'm
mean
doing
success.
something- I'm doing something.
Yeah, succession is, so if you own an
Well,
existing
success,
business.
oh, 0 success. Well, I mean, okay, well, I'll
Help
leave
us
that
all.
one away. Yeah,
So it's, you own an existing business and you want to sell your business, then another business can purchase it. That's succession, so,
okay.
It's not speaking to the success rate of.
no.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, next, is there another question?
Yeah, I got a couple there. The methodology in the commercial, amount of commercial required,
Yeah.
how did you factor in a town with a lot of commuters? Or did you factor in the town with
Yeah,
a
we
lot of
did.
commuters?
We used census population data. We had to use, unfortunately, the 2016 census wasn't actually released yet. So we actually projected, and we actually looked at our variance and it was rather small in terms of what the actual census was. So we were pretty excited. So we looked at usual place of work, and we were able to break out usual place of work Squamish in the district municipality versus usual place of work leaving the municipality. We also factored in no fixed address, and we also factored in home-based business. So we were able to just pull those that are working in a place of employment in Squamish. We had a rather challenging time in terms of getting the proper employment numbers. So what we had to use is an estimate through the business registrar for average employment. But we are actually accessing census data now that the 2016 data is out, to actually look at that and see how our methodology and if there's a big variance between what the outcome was and versus this new census data on labor. And we're gonna have that data in March. We've already asked StatsCan for it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
And then
and
finally.
I can go into it in detail for you. I'd be
Yeah,
happy to do that.
finally, you know, one of the biggest concerns I hear out there is staffing with the housing
Mhm.
costs. Anything on that?
I think, why don't we continue on your presentation, because your 5 areas of focus.
Yeah,
Two of
I
them are
wanna
what you
get,
just talked to.
I'll definitely get
Yeah.
into that further on in the presentation.
Okay,
All
thanks.
right, you're
All right,
on, Alicia,
move
you
on.
ready?
So,
Having a bit of a panic. Do you want me to talk a
No,
little
no,
bit
it
about
was
this?
good. It's good to practice running in hallways. So what I'm going to show you guys now is an example of one of the tools that we're going to be rolling out for local businesses. So bear with me. Okay. Proceed. And then we have to show this. Oh,
Just say not for this site.
okay, well.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the tools while she tries to figure this out. So we have a number of tools, and live demos are always hard in presentations. And our tools are really to help our existing business community as well as investors. So some of the tools are focused on competition, some are focused on the business climate, the workforce, and all the tools are actually built in a way that they provide step-by-step instructions or considerations. So you can basically push the easy button in terms of what's step 1, what do I have to think about, what's step 2, just show one of the ones on
Okay.
the site here.
So unfortunately, we had just gotten our preview site link on Friday, and now when I log in, it's down. So I wish we could share with you Squamish, but I can share an example of another municipality. Okay, no, we just need to get this up.
There we go.
So then,
And then you gotta close the slide. There we go.
how do I show this?
It just won't go over to the other screen.
You can just change it to duplicate with the dark P. I swear we don't have a meeting where we don't have a problem with this system.
Okay. Being a bit aggressive with trying to demo it right
A little,
immediately.
but it's not-
So the example I'm going to show is for Calgary, but we'll have a similar tool for businesses. So what I'll do is, basically there's a list of different business intelligence apps, and we're going to be subscribing to several of these for Squamish. So as an example, I'll show Evaluate the Workforce. And this tool is intended for businesses to understand the workforce a little bit better. And what we really liked about it is it offers this guided descriptions through the analysis that's very much tailored for the business audience. So as you can see here, this has a little bit about Calgary, a dashboard of basic training and education for the community. And so if I'm a business, I can scroll through here. This is just quick data. And then I can actually go into this visualization. And for example, if I want to know whether I can hire an engineer for my company, I can just use this. Say if I want to know a bachelor's degree. And so you can kind of scroll through and see the populations and where these people are located in the community and how many. And then we can also do it by occupation. So for example, for service workers, we can look at that. And then there's a scale here on the bottom left. And then there's also by industry. So that's one example of a tool. So that's industry here. And then there's a couple other tools that will be really interesting. Another example is this Research Your Customer app. So what businesses will be able to do is go in here and then type in their industry. So say for example, if I'm a local restaurant and I want to know if I can maybe open a second location in Squamish, I could go here That looks right. And then this is all customized now, the data and the guidance based on a restaurant. And so there's some guided content here, and then I'll go down and I can do some targeted demographic analysis here. And so I can look at, okay, I want to target these ages and this income, and then there's some additional guidance there. So that's one example, and I'm sorry the Squamish site didn't quite work out for us today.
It's in depth.
Yeah, so that's the first thing. What do we have next that will definitely work? Okay, so I'll probably learn from the last one and just tell you about it. This is a new shot from Nicole Gurney, our photographer. So what we really want to do is tell the story of local businesses in Squamish as part of the website. Oh, Kate's gonna try it. So what we did is we put out a casting call to all local businesses with a criteria and as a way to engage businesses in the website. And we got quite a few submissions, and we went through using the criteria and selected businesses by industry. And so the past 2 weeks, Nicole has been out shooting photos right before holidays. And so just today she sent us this link, and it is working because Kate is manning the computer. I'll just stay away.
So this is just to give you kind of a mood board of the type of shots we're going for. We did a creative brief to talk about, you know, our brand and what we're trying to convey. We talked about some of the restrictions again in terms of what we can and cannot show. We're trying, and don't, just to preface this, not all these are going to be allowed in the end result of the website, simply because we have challenges where there's maybe a logo or a sign or a name, but it's really to give a general feel for Squamish. This is just the start. These are just sort of the proofs, and we'll go from there. And what we've asked her to do is to go out and actually look at all of the community in terms of employment space and how can we articulate the different areas and the growth. And then we are actually shooting some specific business locations, to demonstrate some of the sectors that we have. So this is only the very, very start, but you can see it's a really authentic look. It's really crisp, and we feel it has a nice modern edge, and it'll complement the website and tell the story of Squamish, we think, in a really nice way. So
And,
this is just the start.
Another thing I'll mention is that we're going to be putting these into a library and sharing them with our partners, the Squamish Chamber and Tourism Squamish. And we're really excited because we feel like there are lots of great imagery about Squamish in terms of our recreation here, but in terms of telling the story about what is it like to do business here, we're hoping to really cover that off. So this was just from yesterday, those shots there.
And we are also partnering with various sectors. So we've recognized we're not going to go out and do a big tourism shoot because we know Tourism Squamish does a really great job with that, and they're sharing their assets with us. And other businesses have stepped up and said, we're happy to give you some assets. So we're getting actually images from these businesses. Some we can use, some we can't. But this is just sort of the start of where we're going, and our repository will not only benefit Tourism Squamish and the Chamber and District of Squamish, because we actually own these photos, but it's also going to benefit other organizations that can apply to use the photos. So that's other Squamish economic development type organizations.
Awesome. So that's a little preview of some of the website components.
Oh, actually, you know what, I just do want to touch on, I don't know if we covered it, but just on the website, so that's, you know, we showed you a couple tools, but a lot of our tools that we're pulling in are actually from third-party organizations. And so we're actually pulling, you know, not-for-profit training modules that will help scale businesses for the grow section. And so it's not all customized tools, it's a number of customized and then just third-party tools that we know are going to benefit business, but we're doing it in a way that tells them, sort of links those prospective businesses or those existing businesses to a step-by-step guide of the considerations that they need to have in terms of growth or scaling or starting a business or investing.
And so to transition a little bit, Kate mentioned some of our new processes, and one of them was a communications plan for our team. And so as part of the business license renewal, there's an annual mail out that goes out with that. And what we really wanted to do with it this year was provide some tools and information and really be supportive for businesses. So with this one, it's kind of hard to see with this, but on the one side, there's lots of resources, and this is the type of thing that we're hoping to highlight with our new website. So resources like Government of Canada has a concierge where you can find relevant funding depending on your aim, or Squamish Chamber is another one that's a local resource. So that's one communication tool. And then another one that we're coming out with, this is totally a draft. This is an example of collateral for investors and just prospective, even residents to Squamish, that they just want to know a quick snapshot about why is it great to do business here, and just get a picture of the economic development in Squamish.
And if I may, the Chamber had specifically asked us, they say they have investors walking through the door, much like we do have investors reaching out to us, and they're looking for something tangible that they can walk away with. So having some paper collateral we think is incredibly useful to complement our web-based collateral and the events. So this is very much a draft, but it should be done in January, and this will just be another tool in the toolbox for local organizations when they want to start that discussion about investment. I've got this going, so partnerships and collaboration, that's a really big thing for us. We recognize, and I think, you know, with the strategy, we recognize that we can't do it alone. It's not necessarily all our job. We're facilitators in many ways. So the way that we're working together as a group is looking at issue management. We're trying to tackle issues sometimes before they have to reach council by having a really transparent communication between organizations, and then also addressing issues through some of the work that we're doing with our Squamish Economic Steering Group. We're also cross-promoting and communicating together. So, for instance, when the Chamber has their newsletter, we're putting our content in there, and vice versa, to talk about some of the initiatives. Maybe it's to get them to fill out, get business owners to fill out the survey, so we can get good business intelligence, and that's some of the work we're doing. In terms of programs and initiatives, we're partnering big time in terms of looking for ways that we can sort of reduce costs and drive efficiency, avoid duplication. So we're looking actively at different funding opportunities, whether it be grants, exporting opportunities, whether it's trade missions or training. So that's some of the places where we're just scratching the surface in terms of programs and initiatives. And 2018 will be about building stronger alliances and proactively looking at how we can support the business community here and help it grow. We've secured some new revenue as a result of some of those collaborations, and we think that we owe a lot to Tourism Squamish and the Chamber of Commerce in terms of their openness and willingness to participate right off the bat with a brand new strategy. And so we were able to secure the BC Rural Dividend, as you know, for $116.5. And then Tourism Squamish and the Chamber of Commerce also support it with a cash contribution towards the overall project cost, as well as in-kind support that's not even reflected here. And then also we've got an application in to be confirmed with the federal government for foreign direct investment funding. So hopefully we'll hear about that in 2018, and hopefully we also can continue new revenue into 2018 and beyond. And then a little bit about role and leadership. So the Squamish Economic Steering Group, we formed it in June 2017. The action plan that we developed informs the work plan for the group, and the group has a mandate to not only provide strategic advice and consultation, but actually to actively work on the implementation of the plan. So we actually have 5 working groups because we're very aggressive. I think Linda thinks we may be too aggressive, but our five working groups are data and website, Connect Place Plan, brand and marketing,
Thank you. Future Forward Group and Workforce and Skills. And there's representation from various SESG members, as well as we're extending the invitation to other members of our community or even outside of our community on a skills basis. And we've integrated the digital strategy, components that deal with economic development, and the brand leadership team. It's been integrated into the SESG working group, so that we're continuously addressing those and not just sort of dropping them on the side. And then we're also, we see ourselves from an economic development standpoint providing some leadership to all the other organizations in our community through the OCP and the action plan. And the backbone of everything we do in economic development is having good data, good research. And we really think that that forms the backbone of all of our action plan deliverables, whether it be understanding our labor force, to understanding what skills we need to support in terms of development within Squamish, whether it be about informing employment land or employment space. And we know it's a key priority for our local business community and stakeholders. Good information to make good decisions is key, and we've seen that in all the surveys that have gone out, whether it be from Tourism Squamish, the Chamber, or the district. We know the BC Rural Dividend is really going to give us an edge up in terms of providing good local data, and the data and website working group, as well as the other working groups, are really going to help inform the needs. We see the capacity, our local data capacity, already improving. We're actively talking with our partners about what information they have and how we can share and also provide transparent information to the community. So we're really excited about the new web portal, but we're also excited about working with Dan and IT in terms of further developing the open data portal. We see that that is a great engine and a great portal to actually share a lot of this data. So in 2018, we'll be exploring through the BC Rural Dividend on how we're actually going to make that happen. And another beautiful picture from Nicole. Thank you, and happy to take some questions. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
Thanks, Kate. Great presentation. I have a couple speakers, I have 4 speakers. We are almost an hour behind time, so I just more of a message to council to try to be succinct. I have Councillor Chappelle, Councillor Kent, Councillor Elliott, and Councillor Pratt.
Okay, so business license data and home-based businesses versus brick and mortar businesses. People starting business tend to work at home still. We have the majority of our workforce working even from home or in construction. Do we have data development on that?
Yep.
And when will the business licenses be online?
This is you.
We
That's not mine.
Conrad did speak a little bit to that earlier in the.
Okay, so we do actually have new census data that's out. And the census data actually gives us the indication our workforce has increased 18%. We now have 11,185 in our workforce. At home has increased considerably, 58% since 2011. So it's gone from 850 individuals reporting at home to 1,340. And the reason why I have this up is because of the last presentation.
Thank you.
No fixed address, so that's typically contractors working in and out of town. It's increased 34% to 1,955. And outside of Canada has gone from 35 to 70 workers. Now, in terms of the usual place of work, meaning that they have a physical location to go to work to, the numbers are 7,815 in 2016 had a usual place of work. Of those, 2,585 were outside of the district municipality.
And you can send these stats.
I will,
That's
of
all
course.
that's on the side.
Yeah, so that's a 19% increase. And inside we have a 5%, inside the DM, 5% increase. So we've got the numbers. One of the things that we're working on in the Future Forward group is a sector strategy. And we're actually looking at something rather different for our sector strategy. We're also looking at, in addition to particular sectors like manufacturing or clean energy or tourism, we're actually kind of looking at entrepreneurship and that whole work from home, because we see a real opportunity there. We have limited space to grow as a municipality. We've got people that are earning rather high wages, working from home often, and a lot of discretionary income perhaps. And so how do we nurture that environment? So we're going to be exploring that in 2018 in terms of what we're going to do with that and how we're going to support that ecosystem.
That'd be really interesting to look at through business licensing and eking that out through business licensing, because census data reports our data. It'd be really interesting to see how our business license data lines up with the census data.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, fantastic job. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
if this is off to a rolling start and this is what it looks like, I'm very happy, excited to see it. The model that you used there, which was Calgary, so to create the one that you have for Squamish, all the data that you're gathering, is that done through a poll, or how are you accumulating all that data?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the supplier of that tool, they have an interesting business model where they purchase all the data and then they upload to the site. Right now they're doing it on a quarterly basis, and as you can imagine, that's a lot of work for them. So what they're going to be doing is developing a portal where we can also do more updates in between those quarterly. But yeah, so it's nice because it's going to be updated frequently and evergreen, and something that's far less heavy lifting for staff, and hopefully other District of Squamish staff can make use of the data as well.
So our GIS system would be able to incorporate some of that data if need be, or make layers out of that as well to drop over on that.
Yeah, one example of how we are using the GIS together with that new tool is one of the tools is called Identify Community Facilities. It's using our GIS data, but it was an app that we felt was a little bit simpler to use for user experience. So it's our GIS data that's powering this Identify Community Facilities. Because it's a very simple toggle.
Nice work.
So that's one example.
Nice work, really well done.
Thank you. I have Karen and Ted and Doug, and then hopefully we're going to wrap this up.
Yeah, it's great, Kate and Alicia, to see how your strategy has now moved into all these different actions on so many fronts. I had a curiosity about the call for the photos. What did you call it?
Casting call?
Casting call.
Casting
Thank
call.
you. And will you have all the sectors that you mentioned in the collateral? Are all those going to be represented in some way, shape, or form in the photos?
So what we're doing is we mapped out all the sectors, and then what we've said is we're not going to shoot particular sectors because we know that there's assets that exist. And then we're going to be taking all of those assets, and we have a certain number that we've licensed essentially or purchased, and then incorporate them to the website. We're staging this website. Phase 1 will be much more bare bones. Phase 2 and Phase 3 will be where we're developing more and more content. One of the visions that we have is creating a bit of a gallery. We've seen a couple of other ECDEV organizations that have done a really nice gallery of images that show community, show the various sectors. So I think you'll see a cross-representation of businesses. And where we feel like we really want to focus in on a particular sector, like, I don't know, clean energy or tourism, but we're not really sure how our retail or service sector fits in, we found a solution for that, where we see because we think it's very important, they provide good employment to our community. In the work section, we're going to be featuring quite a bit of imagery and video that's focused on what the local workforce looks like. What does it feel like to work and live here? So you'll see those images and videos reflected in there. We also have a videographer working with the photographer, so we'll have some great video assets as well.
So my last question is just, in one of your working groups is focused on employment, so our workforce. And do we have someone sitting on that task force that's not you? because we're a large employer here, and we are having trouble finding the staff we needed, so. Do we have an HR person that might be sitting on that working
That
to
might be
represent
question through to Linda.
the district?
It's a good point,
Or maybe something to consider.
and something to consider as we, our HR.
Right, thanks.
Ted?
Yeah, thanks. Well, Susan touched on my tech question I had. The working from home aspect, I think is a really good idea. I mean, that, I'm happy to see that encouraging home-based businesses, because one of the big problems we have is housing. And are you addressing housing at all, or do you comment on housing? I mean, I saw the little button up there.
So our Connect Place plan, which is one of the working group, is all around business infrastructure. So we would look at aspects of business infrastructure, which could include housing affordability, it could include employment space, it could include transportation, but only in certain ways, because it's a much larger subject than purely economic development. So for instance, maybe a particular policy that we get asked to comment on by planning or by another department, an issue that's brought forward by economic development stakeholders like the chamber, that we feel has an economic development focus. We would look at it at that table.
So workforce, so you mentioned, like when you showed the map there, you said, oh, if you want someone with a PhD, and then it showed on the map all these.
Mhm.
So would that be where you look for your workforce? So you want to come in and look for a specific?
So we have a workforce and skills group as well, and that is where we're going to be doing a skills, a labor assessment to understand the composition of our labor force. We actually are really encouraged by the data that we can get from third parties around the labor force. Then we're going to look at the supply and demand and understand the gap for the labor force, and then develop programs. In fact, we're already front-ending that with actually the development of the skills program with the Chamber and Tourism Squamish to address some of our issues around employment, whether it's retainment or recruitment. We're talking to Go2HR. Today we talked to Niagara, believe it or not, all around labor force. It was really promising. They have a planning, what is it called, Niagara?
Planning board.
Yeah, Niagara Planning Board. And they are really interested. They're a not-for-profit. They're really interested in working with us to supply us with really great business intelligence that's focused on Squamish at reduced cost, because they have sort of the economies of scale. So we're talking to lots of partners, figuring out new ways to be able to collect data without having to go through a whole bunch of primary research all the time, because it's really onerous, it's really costly, and often it's out there. We just need to be able to aggregate it, make sense of it.
Thanks. Doug?
Thanks. Contrary to Councillor Pryor, and we've disagreed on this before, I wonder about the value of home-based business, because I look at economic development as getting businesses paying commercial taxation, and so typically they're not paying commercial taxation, they're paying residential taxation. They're usually, I think, and I'm going anecdotally, not having employees. It's a sole person that's doing it. I know there are some businesses like contractors and stuff that are operating out of their homes and garages and things, probably contrary to our zoning bylaws, and I'm not sure if we want to encourage that. And I know I've heard that, you know, it leads to eventually a business growing out of it, and I think Microsoft started off in somebody's garage, and maybe that does happen occasionally, but I'm wondering if it's really something that we would want to focus on, as opposed to getting an actual business on the ground in a business space of some kind. I mean, I look at the value of that. I take it that, you know, some of these people, excuse me, if they're successful, they'll have discretionary income. So would a wealthy retired person have a discretionary income? And what is really the difference in terms of, you know, the overall value to our community, unless the person sort of grows off into a bigger business or something like that? And so, you know, it's the housing, encouraging somebody to come and run their business out of their house as opposed to stay in Vancouver. maybe that house would be better served by somebody that's actually living and working somewhere in Squamish because it's difficult to find housing. So there's a number of questions about that. I don't expect to solve it in the next couple of minutes, but I have to say I enjoyed your report. That was the one thing that kind of jumped out at me though, is whether that's something we really do want to encourage and what really is the value of that.
If I may?
Please do.
Very quick. So on all those points, I agree with you, just in terms of how we approach home-based business. I think there's an opportunity. I think there is an opportunity to scale home-based business. We need to be able to bridge that growth and allow home-based businesses to turn into maybe physical locations. And there's lots of success stories with home-based businesses that have done so. I think of Roby's as one example of that, where she started in her basement and sold it to StrideRight for I don't even know how much.
Susan started in her
So I
basement,
think
basically.
nurturing.
Yeah,
I think
If I had a
we
basement,
can't.
I'd have a basement in
I don't think we can ignore home-based business because they are a fairly significant portion of our workforce and our entrepreneurs. They also tend to be highly skilled. So I think we also need to look at it from the perspective of the ecosystem. What's available to Squamish? Are there local procurement opportunities? Can we be doing a better job with that? Can we nurture training and innovation and links between home-based business? So I think we're looking at it in a slightly different way than purely tax-based. We're looking at where are we going, and we have, with all of your comments, a lot of work to do. So 2018 will be part of that work around the sector strategy. We'll be able to better define where we're going and whether or not we would recommend that focus, if that's fair.
Sure.
Yeah, well, just one quick point, it's the highly skilled ones that you know, I know when we had a tech group formed years ago, and everybody came out, they were home-based business, and all these tech people worked from home, and they didn't even realize all the other guys were there. And it started, that's why I was asking about the map. Once you start getting a lot of these people at home, and then a company will come in and go, wow, look at that workforce. So that was my point to home-based business.
Thanks, and on the point of home-based businesses, connecting them, the thing that bothers me about a lot of the home-based businesses is they're not the single-person startups. They're people that can't find brick and mortar because it's professional businesses that are often a group of people that are working out of homes that are now transformed into brick and mortar and are not paying taxes and competing with the rest of the home-based businesses. I mean, we can all work like that, that would be great. But I think that connecting those people is really important, and I love that strategy that you brought up to focus on those businesses and figure out what their needs are, how we connect them, and if they do need brick and mortar, and connecting them with other people.
We are hearing that more and more, that I've got 4 people working here, but we can't get an office. So we need to be able to address that and nurture that, because that's, if they can't scale, if they can't grow, then they're stifled. And you know, that's why we're having businesses relocating. I think West Coast Outbuildings would be an example of a business that's relocated. I saw the article in the newspaper where they could not grow in their existing location, and so they were forced to look beyond the Lower Mainland, but they happily were able to find something to be able to grow, and with a very complementary workforce.
Yes, our challenges can be in other cities' needs, meet other people's needs, so connecting those outside, I think you do a really great job of that, Caitlin. And Alicia.
And home-based business is much more than just someone running a, you know, artisan business out of their base. It's people working from home. It's people who might go down to the city to have meetings once or twice. It's a very diverse talent and labor force that's working, and opportunity for growth. I want to thank both of you, both Alicia and Kate. I think you've done a fantastic job. I think this is the most comprehensive, diversified approach to economic development the district's ever had, by far. But it's just the beginning, as you guys said. You're just laying the groundwork right now. But it's not simple in its approach. It's comprehensive. It's global. It's local. It's market, labor, accommodation, all these things that fuel the economy here. You've connected all those dots really, really well and in a very tight, thoughtful way. So I just want to give you guys total kudos on that. I think we look forward to seeing how I think we're seeing some success already, which is pretty cool. Some of it made by accident, some of it by design. But I think now that once we get these tools in place and you guys really start to proactively, strategically go after this, it'll be really interesting to see how we benchmark this, how we track the success of this from all your 5 sort of major focus points, both in terms of housing. I think kudos to our CAO and the staff about how we've now trying to integrate those inputs from economic development into planning and vice versa, into engineering and how we strategize infrastructure and development opportunities. So I think good news story, great job. Looking forward to the website getting up there and working really well. And hearing that feedback from the community about, is this meeting your needs? Are these tools that are going to be helpful? How can you improve? And I know that's part of your ethos, so congratulations, good job, and we look forward to the next update and lots of good news to come.
Last kudos, just a kudos.
I think there's kudos.
The survey is excellent. The
Yeah.
questions in it are excellent. They're
Really good.
relevant. They're fantastic. I've posted it everywhere.
Thank you, Mayor Management Council.
Yeah, you did a great job.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. We're going to entertain a motion to terminate. Moved by
No,
Asian
no,
Beer.
no, no.
Oh yeah, I have a fourth item.
Okay.
Thank you, it's here. Thanks, guys. So just very quickly, I was hoping council would entertain me a little bit here. No, I don't want you singing or dancing or anything, but. So I had a mayor's lunch on Friday about daycare and early childhood development index, and had a really good, frank, robust conversation with a lot of, there were in-home care providers, there were entities like Montessori and Sea to Sky who have daycare centers. We had Sarah was there from planning, Councillor Elliott was there. It was a really comprehensive discussion. One of the things that was brought up was a needs assessment of basically daycare. And that's not just in-home and facilities and preschool, but the whole gamut of what a community needs. And they talked about one that happened on the North Shore. And they did this needs assessment and came up with a bit of a child care strategy. And one of the things that was talked about too was the timing of some provincial announcements with regard to $10 daycare and sort of 3 funding streams that are anticipated in this realm. One is bricks and mortar, obviously. The other is, and actually I meant to ask Kate or pose Kate this question, but one of the strategies that I understand is coming based on a conversation we had with Sharon Gregson from $10 a day daycare is part of the motivation is how do you get, of the NDP government, is how do you get people back into the workforce through perhaps working in childcare or actually providing affordable childcare to allow people to actually get out of the home and back in the workforce, because we're going to have a labor shortage is what all demographics are indicating. So to sort of get us to the point where we have some real grounded information, Ali at Sea to Sky said they had been talking about putting together a proposal to go out and do this needs assessment in the first basically 2 months of the year. The anticipated announcements are with the budget sort of February, March coming up. She whipped together this proposal. It costs $18,000. I personally, I'm happy to pass this around. Personally, I think this is something that we should partner on and focus on. By all accounts, certainly anecdotally, and this is the data that will prove it, or not prove it, I guess, but is that there is a dire shortage of daycare. The amount of wait lists are extreme. The amount of babies that are being born in the hospital are above the provincial average by a lot. And so what I'm hoping council will consider is, we have $22,000 in council contingency left over from 2017, is that we consider funding up to $9,000, so half of what they're requesting. They said they can try to dig around and find the remaining money to essentially put this RFP out to get this needs analysis assessment done out there in, I think there's a deadline for it, or there's a timeline for it, but actually get it out there so we can get the information and have it ready when these funding announcements come.
Yeah. So, first of all, I think that's a great idea, and always fantastic. It would be fantastic to have her do that. I think we'd have to go out to RFP to actually look at.
That's what this is.
This is to go out to RFP, because it's not a person's.
The alley is the one just wrote the RFP. The RFP is to go out to do the needs assessment, yeah.
Excellent. I'm wondering if we have a ton of, we should have data. We changed a lot of daycare bylaws about where we could have daycare, about who could run daycares. That was a lot of work done and with a lot of information and a lot of statistics done in previous years. Can we gather those statistics and see, because we should be able to figure out by business licensing?
That's what this is.
But we should have all that data already. With those bylaw changes, all that information came to council, and with business licensing of figuring out how many daycare spaces we have, we should have all that data already.
So I think we certainly have data on what's out there, in-home and not in-home, so actually purpose-built. We should have data on what's closed, what's come and closed and that type of thing, people in town, and how many spaces.
And wait list, because that's provincial.
So this is essentially accumulating all those data sets from all the different agencies, including us, and doing a needs assessment.
My point is that we did collect those, and it was only like 2 years ago.
So that data will be provided to be able to inform the needs assessment.
Okay, because we had the wait list from Sea to Sky, we had all the information gathered. I gathered it because I was putting forward motions, so we had a lot of information.
So my answer is yes.
But paying $18,000 more or $9,000, I don't mind $18,000, I'd have trouble with. But I want to know what data we have already without going out to RFP for it.
We're not going up for RFP. They are going up for RFP. We are partnering with them.
If we have all the information to give them, why would we be funding something if we have information? I just want to see what information we already have so that we can figure out if this is something that we can spend money on.
I'll go to Doug and then Karen and then Peter and then Ted and then Linda.
And I think this is important information because it's a rapidly changing community, and that was a couple of years ago at least, and maybe even some of the last term. So I am in favor of having it updated. I think it puts us in a good position for taking positions or grant applications depending on what the budget brings forward. And also ground truthing some of our zoning decisions that we've made over the last little while and maybe facing into the future and giving us data to support those or not, depending on what it shows. So I will move, we apply $9,000 from council contingency towards
The needs assessment for
the
childcare.
needs assessment for childcare.
I'll second.
Moved by Councilor Waste, second by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Elliott, Councilor Pryor, Councilor Kent. And with, I didn't know if you wanted to respond to anything.
I can add, but I didn't have
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for putting that motion forward. I think this is really important, and at the lunch, there was one woman there, and I can't recall who, but she's been responsible for collecting a lot of this data. And she says there's definitely gaps in the data, and North Shore also looked at grandparents looking after kids, so people who are not using licensed daycare, and really trying to figure that out. And it's really, for me, about preparing our community with up-to-date information so that we can aggressively take advantage of whatever announcements come in the budget. And there, without exception, everybody at that lunch says we're in a crisis. So, and we will be in more of a crisis. And they're looking at everything from before school care, after care, and toddler, like infant to toddler care is the biggest area of need right now. And just the special training that's required to go through that. So we need to understand the number of babies being born, what the demand is at that first level, because we really don't have enough spaces for that at all.
And I'm glad you brought up the labor piece, because that was, there's not only are there not the facilities to meet the demand, but there isn't the labor force to meet the demand. So there's training, there's attraction, there's a whole bunch of pieces to it as well. Ted?
Yeah, same as what Karen said there, we gotta be ready for the resources if they're coming. It's a great idea.
Peter?
Yeah, I support it for all the reasons that have just been put forward.
Awesome. Yeah.
So all of the issues are provincial. We provide space. We do everything that is physically within our decision-making capability. The issue is finding labor. The reason that people have shut daycares is because they can't find labor. So is that something we can affect? And I agree with like figuring out grandparents taking care of kids. I think that those are all interesting points, but when you can't find daycare workers and that's your sticking point, that's something that we can affect. We've changed all our bylaws, all our zoning and everything to attract daycares, to allow space for daycares. We've put in, like we've asked for daycares to go into ground floor retail spaces. And I don't disagree that more information is better to have in planning for the future, but when your sticking point is a provincial decision, how does that actually, like how does having more information, 357 babies were born last year. We have a lot of babies being born. How do we affect, what are the decision-making points with more information? If we have information already and the sticking point is labor.
I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. This is a much bigger
More
conversation.
studies.
It's not, it's a needs assessment,
Exactly.
and it's fundamental, and it's a needs assessment on all those things you just talked about.
You should have come to the lunch.
Labor, I mean, it's all those things combined, so thank you, everybody. Motion to terminate, moved by Karen, seconded by Susan, all those in favor, opposed, motion carries.